My father raised his crystal champagne flute to toast my sister's pregnancy in front of 300 of Atlanta's most elite residents. He called her unborn child the ultimate blessing and the very first grandchild to carry on our legacy. Then he looked right down from the stage at me, his 35-year-old unmarried disappointment of a daughter. He asked over the microphone when I was going to stop playing with other people's money and give the family a real legacy. I did not cry. I did not shrink away into the shadows. Instead, I stood up, walked straight up those carpeted steps, and handed him a framed photograph of a beautiful 9-month-old baby girl. I told him my turn was 9 months ago, and that he had been invited to the hospital, but his golden child had intercepted the mail to hide the truth. Before I tell you exactly how this single photograph shattered my parents' carefully curated world and exposed a multi-million-dollar fraud, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to burn down a toxic family empire just to protect your own peace. I sat at table 4, perfectly positioned, just outside the direct spotlight. This was exactly where my mother Vivian always wanted me. The country club in Buckhead was draped in white orchids and dripping with excessive wealth, hosting the celebration of my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. The room was packed with politicians, real estate tycoons, and pastors of megachurches. They all formed the inner circle of Atlanta's black elite. My father, Jeremiah, stood at the center of it all, adjusting his custom tuxedo, soaking in the admiration like he was royalty. Beside him stood my mother, draped in sequins, ensuring every stray napkin and loose thread was instantly handled. They were the picture of generational success. They were a power couple who demanded absolute perfection from everyone around them, but that perfection was an illusion, and I was the designated flaw in their masterpiece. I am Maya, 35 years old and a self-made wealth manager. I spent the last decade quietly building my own financial firm from the ground up. I deal with massive commercial debt portfolios and high net worth clients. But in my family, financial independence as a woman meant absolutely nothing if it did not come with a high society husband and a perfectly timed pregnancy. To Jeremiah and Vivian, I was a failure because I refused to conform to their rigid timeline. I refused to marry the sons of their country club friends, and I refused to let my mother dictate every decision I made about my own body and future. So they poured all their praise, their attention, and their money into my younger sister, Chloe. Chloe was 32 and had mastered the art of being exactly what our parents wanted. She was loud, demanding, and constantly needed rescuing. This made my parents feel powerful and essential. 2 years ago, she married Trent, a smooth-talking white man who called himself an entrepreneur. To my parents, Trent was the perfect addition to their diverse modern portfolio of a family. They loved telling their friends about his tech startups. They conveniently ignored the fact that every single one of his businesses failed within months. Trent played the part well, always wearing expensive suits and flashing a winning smile. But I managed money for a living. I could spot a man drowning in secret debt from a mile away. Tonight, Trent looked particularly pale. He was sweating through his expensive collar as he stood near the edge of the stage, but I kept my observations to myself. I was just trying to get through the evening without causing a scene. Then the music stopped. My father tapped his spoon against his crystal glass. The sharp ringing sound demanded absolute silence from the ballroom. Conversations halted. Waiters stopped pouring wine. Jeremiah took the microphone with a practiced ease, wrapping his free arm around my mother's waist. He thanked everyone for coming, speaking at length about the importance of family faith and generational wealth. Then his face lit up with a massive theatrical smile as he called Chloe and Trent to the stage. Chloe glided up the steps in a form-fitting emerald gown. It was designed specifically to show off the tiny, barely visible bump of her 3-month pregnancy. Trent followed her. His smile looked more like a grimace as he stood stiffly by her side. My father reached out and proudly rubbed Chloe's stomach. His voice boomed over the speakers. He announced that this was the ultimate blessing. He called the baby the first grandchild to carry on their legacy, the child who would inherit the future they had built. The crowd erupted into applause. My mother wiped away a perfectly timed tear. But Jeremiah was not finished. The applause died down and his eyes scanned the room. They bypassed the wealthy donors and landed directly on me. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. He pointed at me from the stage. His voice dripped with public condescension. Maya, he said, his tone turning into a weapon. You are 35. When are you going to stop obsessing over your clients' portfolios and give us a real legacy? When is your turn? The silence that followed was suffocating. 300 pairs of eyes shifted to table 4, staring at me with a mixture of pity and uncomfortable shock. My mother looked away, pretending to adjust her diamond bracelet. She was fully complicit in the humiliation. Chloe smirked, leaning her head on Trent's shoulder, drinking in my public execution. They expected me to lower my head. They expected me to blush, to mumble a polite excuse, and to accept my place as the family scapegoat, just like I had done when I was a teenager. I had spent years swallowing my pride while my father belittled my achievements and magnified my sisters. Every holiday dinner, every family reunion, every Sunday service, there was always a comment about my unnatural obsession with my career and my failure to provide them with the one thing they valued above all else. They wanted a continuation of their bloodline. But I was not a teenager anymore. I was a woman who managed millions of dollars and ruthlessly dismantled corporate takeovers before breakfast. I did not shrink. I slowly picked up my linen napkin, placed it neatly on the table, and pushed my chair back. The heavy silence in the ballroom felt electric as I stood up. My heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as I bypassed the tables and walked directly toward the stage. Whispers started rippling through the crowd. Women leaned in to whisper behind their hands, and men awkwardly shifted in their seats, but I kept my eyes locked entirely on my father. Every step I took toward the stage felt like shedding a layer of the guilt and shame they had forced onto me for 35 years. I remembered the day I opened my first wealth management office. My father had refused to attend the ribbon cutting because Chloe had a minor headache and needed her parents to bring her soup. I remembered the night I closed my first major commercial debt portfolio. My mother had only asked if the long hours were causing wrinkles that would ruin my chances of finding a husband. All of those memories fueled the steady, calm rhythm of my footsteps. I walked up the carpeted steps, standing face to face with the man who had just tried to strip away my dignity in front of the entire city. I reached into my designer bag, and my fingers wrapped around the smooth edge of a glossy framed photograph. I did not hand it to him gently. I pressed it firmly against his chest, forcing him to take it. He looked down at the picture, and his confident, mocking expression instantly shattered into a million pieces. It was a photograph of a beautiful, smiling 9-month-old baby girl. She had my dark, expressive eyes and the bright, undeniable smile of my husband, Isaiah. The picture captured her sitting on a plush rug holding a small toy block, completely oblivious to the chaos her existence was about to unleash on this ballroom. My turn was 9 months ago, Dad, I said. My voice carried clearly through the silent room entirely without the need for a microphone. It cut through the tension like a knife. I sent the birth announcement, the baby shower invite, and the hospital delivery details directly to the family estate. You were invited. The air completely left the room. My father stared at the picture, his mouth opening and closing without a single sound coming out. The hand holding the microphone trembled, broadcasting a low, unsteady feedback noise across the ballroom. He looked from the photograph to me, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and sheer disbelief. For a man who built his entire reputation on knowing everything that happened in his family and his business, realizing he had a 9-month-old granddaughter he knew absolutely nothing about, was a devastating blow to his ego. My mother, Vivian, reacted instantly. Her survival instincts kicked in to protect the perfect family image she had spent 4 decades curating. She gasped dramatically, her hands flying to her chest. Then she lunged forward and grabbed the microphone from my father's unresisting hand. Her voice echoed loudly, sharp and frantic. "You are lying to ruin your sister's moment," she shouted, pointing an accusing finger at me. "You have always been jealous of Chloe. You rented a baby picture just to steal the spotlight because you cannot stand to see anyone else happy." The crowd gasped again. A collective wave of shock rolled through the hundreds of seated guests. My mother's accusation was absurd, desperate, and completely in character. She had always painted me as the bitter, jealous older sister whenever Chloe's actions needed defending. Chloe immediately leaned into the performance. She brought her hands to her face and let out a loud, theatrical sob. She pressed her face against Trent's shoulder, crying about how cruel I was to ruin the most important night of her life. My parents' friends at the front tables began to murmur in sympathy for the golden child, casting judgmental glares in my direction. But I had come prepared for this exact reaction. I did not raise my voice, and I did not argue with my mother's hysterical claims. I simply reached back into my designer bag and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. I unfolded it slowly, making sure every movement was deliberate and visible to the crowd. It was a certified mail delivery receipt. I held it up, turning it so the bright overhead lights caught the official postal service stamps and the clear, undeniable signature at the bottom. "I am not lying, Mom," I said, keeping my tone perfectly level. "I sent every single piece of mail regarding my pregnancy and my daughter's birth via certified delivery because I knew this exact thing would happen." I looked directly at my sister, who had suddenly stopped sobbing. Chloe has a very long, very documented history of intercepting my mail to control the narrative. She did it when I was 17, hiding my college acceptance letters so she could pretend I was failing. And she did it again 9 months ago. I tapped the signature line on the receipt. That is Chloe's signature right there. She signed for the birth announcement. She signed for the hospital details. She hid my daughter from you so she could stand on this stage tonight and pretend she was giving you the first grandchild. My father snatched the receipt from my hand. He stared at the signature, his eyes darting between the official document and his golden, sobbing daughter. The undeniable truth was staring him right in the face. Chloe had orchestrated a massive deception right under his roof, manipulating the entire family just to keep the spotlight firmly fixed on herself. Vivian tried to speak. She tried to find another excuse, another way to blame me, but the evidence was absolute. As the reality of Chloe's actions settled over the stage, I noticed something else happening. It was something far more interesting than my sister's fake tears or my parents' crumbling pride. Trent, my white brother-in-law, was not comforting his weeping wife. He was not looking at the mail receipt or my angry parents. He was staring fixedly at the photograph of my baby girl, and he looked like he was about to pass out. All the color had completely drained from his face, leaving him a sickly pale shade of gray. His breathing was shallow and rapid. His eyes were wide with genuine, unadulterated panic. Trent swayed slightly, his expensive suit suddenly looking too big for him. He grabbed Chloe by the arm. His grip was so tight she flinched and dropped her hands from her face. The theatrical sobbing vanished, replaced by a look of confusion as she stared at her husband. Trent leaned in close to her. He completely ignored the microphone, my parents, and the hundreds of guests watching their every move. His voice was a harsh, desperate whisper, but in the dead silence of the stage I heard every single word. "You said the trust was guaranteed," Trent hissed. His eyes darted frantically toward my father and back to the photograph of my daughter. "You told me your baby was the firstborn. You promised me the $5 million payout was guaranteed." The sheer terror in his voice sent a shockwave through my mind. Trent did not care about the emotional betrayal. He did not care that his wife had lied to her parents about a baby. He cared about a $5 million trust payout, and he was terrified because my daughter's existence meant that money was gone. The puzzle pieces instantly snapped together in my head. Chloe had not just hidden my baby out of spite or a petty need for attention. She had hidden Zuri so her own unborn child would be legally registered as the firstborn grandchild. Trent needed that specific multi-million-dollar payout, and he needed it desperately. My father, still holding the photograph and the mail receipt, finally processed the chaotic scene unfolding around him. The whispers from the ballroom had escalated into a loud, undeniable buzz of gossip. The elite society he cared so deeply about was currently witnessing the absolute destruction of his flawless family image. He looked at me, then at Chloe, and finally at Trent's panicked, sweating face. Instead of demanding answers from the daughter who had lied to him, or the son-in-law, who was whispering frantically about trust funds, Jeremiah's face twisted into a mask of pure fury, and he turned that fury entirely on me. "Security!" my father barked into the microphone. His voice echoed violently through the room. "Clear the stage. We are moving this to the private antechamber right now." The heavy wooden doors of the VIP antechamber slammed shut behind us, cutting off the noise of the ballroom and trapping us in a tense, airless silence. The room was designed for private country club meetings lined with leather chairs and dark mahogany walls. But right now, it felt like a prison cell. Isaiah, my husband, had followed me closely from table 4, standing tall and calm by my side. He was a corporate attorney, a man who made his living navigating high-stakes conflicts with absolute precision. He placed his hand on the small of my back. It was a silent anchor of support as the family explosion finally detonated. My father did not confront Chloe about stealing the mail. He did not ask Trent why he was hyperventilating about a trust fund payout. Instead, he turned his entire massive presence toward me. His face twisted with a rage he could no longer hide behind a microphone. "You had a child out of wedlock and hid her from this family," he shouted, his voice vibrating off the wood-paneled walls. "You embarrassed me in front of my board members, my investors, the entire congregation. How dare you drag your personal shame onto my stage and humiliate this family?" Isaiah stepped forward before I even had to open my mouth. He reached into the inner pocket of his tailored suit jacket and pulled out a crisp, folded document. He calmly placed it on the heavy wooden table sitting between us and my father. "Maya did not have a child out of wedlock, Jeremiah," Isaiah said. His voice was smooth and entirely devoid of intimidation. "That is our marriage certificate. We eloped 3 years ago. We kept it private because we had absolutely no interest in subjecting our marriage or our daughter to Vivian's constant meddling and financial demands. We built our family in peace entirely independent of your toxic circus." My mother gasped, ignoring the legal document on the table completely. She rushed over to Chloe, wrapping her arms around her golden child, shielding her from the reality of the situation. "Chloe was just protecting us, Jeremiah," my mother cried out. She stroked Chloe's hair as if she were a toddler. "Maya marrying in secret and having a baby behind our backs is shameful. It is a disgrace." Chloe knew my blood pressure could not handle the scandal of a hidden pregnancy in this family. She intercepted the mail to protect my health. She was doing a good thing. The mental gymnastics required to turn a calculated act of mail theft into a heroic gesture of maternal protection was staggering. But my mother performed the routine flawlessly. Chloe immediately leaned into the victim role. She clutched her stomach and sobbed against my mother's sequined shoulder. "The stress of Maya's selfishness is hurting my baby," Chloe wailed. Her voice was muffled but perfectly pitched for maximum sympathy. "She just wants to destroy my happiness, because she has always been jealous that I did things the right way." My father immediately softened at the sight of Chloe's tears. His rage toward me solidified into a cold, hard glare. "You see what you are doing?" he demanded, pointing a finger at my chest. "You owe your pregnant sister an apology right now, Maya. You will walk back out into that ballroom, take the microphone, and tell everyone that the photograph was a mistake, a prank, whatever lie you need to spin to fix the damage you just caused." I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile that finally made my father lower his pointing finger. "I am not apologizing to anyone," I said quietly, "and I am certainly not walking back out there to fix your broken public image." I turned my attention entirely away from my parents and locked eyes with Trent. My white brother-in-law was leaning against the mahogany wall. He was gripping the edge of a side table so hard his knuckles had turned completely white. He was breathing heavily, sweat beading on his forehead. He looked like a man staring down the barrel of a loaded gun. "Why do you look so terrified, Trent?" I asked. My voice echoed clearly in the sudden quiet of the room. My mother stopped consoling Chloe for a fraction of a second. My father frowned, turning to look at his son-in-law. Trent swallowed hard. His eyes darted frantically toward the door, then back to me. "I do not know what you are talking about," he stammered. His smooth entrepreneurial charm was completely gone. "I am just shocked by all this family drama. It is overwhelming." I reached into my designer bag one last time and pulled out my tablet. I tapped the screen, bringing up a highly classified internal document from my wealth management firm. "You are not overwhelmed by family drama, Trent. You are overwhelmed because you just realized your entire financial house of cards is about to collapse." I turned the screen to face my father. I did not come here tonight just to introduce my beautiful daughter, Dad. I came because my firm recently acquired the massive commercial debt portfolio of a major lending institution. My father squinted at the screen, not quite understanding what he was looking at. What does your corporate debt acquisition have to do with my anniversary gala? He demanded impatiently. It has everything to do with you, I replied. I stepped closer so he could read the fine print on the screen. Because Trent's newest highly praised tech startup is completely bankrupt. To keep it afloat, he took out a $3 million commercial loan 4 months ago. And because he had zero credit and zero viable assets, he leveraged your house as collateral. My father froze. The air in the room grew instantly heavy. What are you talking about? Jeremiah whispered, all the booming authority drained from his voice. I own my house outright. It is the family estate. No one can use it as collateral without my direct signature. I zoomed in on the document displayed on the tablet screen. My finger tapped the bottom line, next to the official lender's seal. He did not need your permission, Dad, I said softly. I delivered the final crushing blow of the evening, because he forged your signature to get the money. The silence that followed was absolute. My father stared at the digital signature on the screen, recognizing the clumsy, desperate attempt to mimic his handwriting. He slowly turned his head to look at Trent. The golden son-in-law, the perfect addition to their high society image, was now trembling against the wall. He was trapped in a multi-million-dollar federal crime. My mother stood completely paralyzed, her hands falling away from Chloe. Chloe stared at her husband in genuine horror. She was realizing that the massive fortune she thought she had married into was nothing but a mountain of fraudulent debt. I stood tall beside my husband, feeling a profound sense of peace wash over me. The toxic empire my parents had spent 40 years building on lies, favoritism, and public image was burning to the ground right in front of them, and I was holding the match. I pushed my chair back from table 4. The heavy mahogany legs scraped loudly against the polished marble floor, and that single sound cut through the silence like a gunshot. Hundreds of faces turned toward me. Men in custom tuxedos and women in silk evening gowns stared, waiting for me to break down. They expected me to run out of the ballroom in tears, thoroughly humiliated by my own father. I glanced across the table at my husband, Isaiah. He sat perfectly still, sipping his water, his dark eyes locked on mine with absolute unwavering support. He knew exactly what was in my bag, and he knew exactly what I was about to do. I smoothed the lapels of my tailored blazer, picked up my designer bag, and walked directly toward the stage. My heels clicked in a steady, unbothered rhythm. I did not look at the pitying eyes of my parents' country club friends. I kept my gaze locked entirely on my father. Every step I took toward the stage felt like shedding a layer of the guilt and shame they had forced onto me for 35 years. I remembered the day I opened my first wealth management office. My father had refused to attend the ribbon cutting because Chloe had a minor headache and needed her parents to bring her soup. I remembered the night I closed my first major commercial debt portfolio. My mother had only asked if the long hours were causing wrinkles that would ruin my chances of finding a husband. All of those memories fueled the steady, calm rhythm of my footsteps. The opulent crystal chandeliers overhead cast a harsh, glittering light on the stage as I walked up the carpeted steps. I stood face to face with the man who had just tried to strip away my dignity in front of the entire city. Jeremiah stood frozen, the microphone still gripped tightly in his hand. Chloe shifted uncomfortably, clutching Trent's arm. Trent forced a rigid smile, playing the supportive husband perfectly. I stepped right into my father's personal space. The scent of his expensive cologne hung heavy in the air. I reached into my bag and pulled out a glossy framed photograph. I pressed it firmly into his chest, forcing his free hand to come up and take it. He looked down at the image. It was a picture of a beautiful, smiling 9-month-old baby girl with my dark eyes and Isaiah's bright, undeniable smile. She was sitting on a plush rug holding a wooden block, completely oblivious to the chaos her existence was about to unleash. My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The booming authority he had wielded just seconds ago evaporated completely. I did not need a microphone. My voice carried clear and sharp across the breathless room. My turn was 9 months ago, Dad. I said it loud enough for the front rows to hear every syllable. I sent the birth announcement, the baby shower invite, and the hospital delivery details directly to the family estate. You were invited. The ballroom erupted into shocked gasps. Wealthy socialites leaned across their tables, whispering frantically behind their manicured hands. My mother Vivian reacted with the speed of a cornered animal. She lunged forward, her sequined dress flashing under the stage lights, and snatched the microphone from my father's trembling hand. She had spent 4 decades carefully curating this flawless family image, and she was not about to let me dismantle it. "You are lying to ruin your sister's moment," she shouted over the speakers, her voice desperate and shrill. "You have always been jealous of Chloe. You rented a baby picture just to steal the spotlight because you cannot stand to see anyone else happy." Chloe immediately leaned into the performance. She placed both hands over her face, letting out a loud theatrical sob. She leaned heavily against Trent, crying about how cruel I was, how the stress was going to hurt her pregnancy. The crowd murmured in sympathy for her, casting judgmental glares in my direction. They were so eager to believe the narrative of the bitter, childless career woman attacking her glowing, pregnant younger sister. I did not raise my voice to argue. I simply reached back into my bag. I pulled out a small, neatly folded piece of paper. I held it up high, turning it so the bright stage lights caught the official Postal Service stamps. "I am not lying, Mom," I said smoothly. "I sent every single piece of mail regarding my pregnancy and my daughter's birth via certified delivery because I knew this exact thing would happen." I turned to look at my weeping sister. Chloe has a very long, very documented history of intercepting my mail to control the narrative. She did it when I was 17, hiding my college acceptance letters so she could pretend I was failing. And she did it again 9 months ago. I pointed to the bottom of the receipt. "That is Chloe's signature right there. She signed for the birth announcement. She hid my daughter from you so she could stand on this stage tonight and pretend she was giving you the first grandchild." My father snatched the receipt from my hand. He stared at his golden child's signature, the reality of her deception hitting him. Vivian tried to stammer another excuse, trying to find a way to make the certified document disappear, but I was no longer paying attention to them. I was watching Trent. I was not comforting his sobbing wife. He was staring at the photograph of my daughter still clutched in my father's hand. All the color had drained from his face. He looked sickly and pale, his chest heaving as if he could not pull enough oxygen into his lungs. The smooth, arrogant facade he usually wore was entirely gone. He grabbed Chloe's arm, his grip so tight she gasped in genuine shock, her hands dropping away from her dry, tearless face. He leaned down, ignoring the murmuring crowd, ignoring my parents. His voice was a frantic, terrified whisper, but in the tense silence of the stage I heard every single word. "You said the trust was guaranteed!" Trent hissed, his eyes darting wildly between my sister and the photograph of my baby. "You told me your baby was the firstborn. You promised me the $5 million payout was guaranteed." My mother's voice screeches through the ballroom speakers, shrill and desperate. She grips the microphone with both hands, her knuckles turning bone white against the dark metal. She shouts to the crowd that I am a bitter, jealous outcast. She claims I would stoop so low as to use a fake baby picture just to ruin my younger sister's perfect night. The wealthy guests seated at the tables murmur in shock. Silverware clinks against fine china as people shift uncomfortably. Some shake their heads in pity, fully buying into Vivian's narrative. They have been conditioned for years to see me as the difficult daughter, the one who never quite fit into the pristine mold of the family empire. I do not raise my voice. I do not let her panic infect me. I have spent my entire adult life navigating hostile boardrooms and aggressive corporate takeovers. A temper tantrum from my mother is nothing I cannot handle. I simply reach into my leather handbag. The smooth, cool paper of the certified mail receipt slides easily into my grasp. I pull it out and hold it up high. The crisp white rectangle catches the glare of the crystal chandeliers above us, a flag of undeniable truth. I step closer to my mother, forcing her to look at the document. "I did not rent a baby, Mom," I say. My voice is steady, layered with years of hard-earned confidence, and it carries enough weight to slice right through her theatrical outrage. I sent the birth announcement 4 months ago. I sent the hospital details, the weight and height of your granddaughter, and the invitations to the baby shower via certified mail. I knew better than to trust standard delivery when it comes to communicating with this family. My father, still holding the photograph of my daughter Zuri, finally finds his voice. He demands to know what I am talking about. He insists that absolutely nothing ever arrived at the estate. His face flushes a deep, angry red as he claims I am fabricating this entire story to embarrass him in front of his investors and church members. I turn my gaze away from him and lock eyes with Chloe. She is still standing in the center of the stage. Her hands are resting protectively over her slightly rounded stomach, playing the role of the glowing, wronged mother-to-be. But the smug smirk she wore moments ago has vanished. Her eyes are darting nervously toward the folded paper in my hand. I look back at my father. I remind him of a spring morning 15 years ago. I ask him if he remembers the day I supposedly received rejection letters from every single top-tier university I had applied to. I remind him how he stood in his home office and told me I was a massive disappointment. He refused to pay my tuition for a local state school because I had failed to uphold the family standard of excellence. I spent 4 years working night shifts at a financial firm while taking full course loads, exhausted and believing I simply was not good enough. I take a step closer to Chloe. It took me 3 years to discover that my Stanford acceptance letter had actually arrived at the house. Chloe had intercepted the mail and hidden my acceptance letter in the bottom of her closet. She could not stand the thought of me leaving, succeeding on my own terms, and escaping the toxic dynamic she thrived in. She needed me to be the failure so she could remain the golden child. Vivian gasps again. She steps in front of Chloe to shield her from my words. She tells me to stop living in the past. She demands that I stop bringing up ancient childhood mistakes to justify my current cruelty. She calls me delusional. But this is not the past, I say, my voice ringing with absolute certainty. This is exactly what she did 9 months ago. I thrust the receipt directly toward my father. Read the signature line, Dad. The postal worker requires a direct signature for certified delivery. I paid extra for the return receipt because I knew Chloe still lived at the estate. Jeremiah snatches this paper from my hand. He pulls his reading glasses from his tuxedo pocket with shaking fingers and stares at the ink. I watch the realization hit him like a physical blow. The arrogant set of his shoulders drops. The absolute certainty he always carries completely vanishes. Staring back at him is the loopy, highly distinctive signature of his favorite daughter. She signed for it, I announced to the silent room. Chloe signed for the package containing the news of your true first grandchild. She intercepted it, hid it, and decided to pretend my daughter did not exist. She did it so she could stand on this stage tonight and give you the illusion that her baby is the firstborn. She manipulated you, Dad, just like she always does, to keep the spotlight entirely on herself. The grand illusion shatters. The perfect family facade my parents have guarded with their lives crumbles into dust on that stage. My father slowly lowers the paper, turning his head to look at Chloe. He asks her if it is true. His voice is barely a whisper, but it carries a terrifying razor-sharp edge. Chloe realizes she is completely trapped. The golden child routine will not work when the physical evidence is written in black and white ink. So she immediately deploys her ultimate defense mechanism. She gasps loudly, her hands flying to her throat. She stumbles backward, her designer emerald heels catching on the carpeted stage. She begins to hyperventilate, taking short, dramatic, heaving gasps of air. She cries out that I am attacking her, that the stress is causing her physical pain. She clutches her stomach, sinking to her knees, sobbing that I am putting her unborn baby at serious risk. It is a masterful, calculated performance. Vivian drops the microphone. The heavy thud and subsequent feedback screech through the speakers, making several guests cover their ears. Vivian falls to her knees beside Chloe. She wraps her arms around her youngest daughter, glaring up at me with pure hatred, screaming that I am an absolute monster for endangering a pregnant woman. But I am not looking at Chloe's fake tears. I am not looking at my mother's furious, enabling glare. My eyes are fixed entirely on Trent. My sister's husband has not moved to comfort her. He is not kneeling on the floor holding her hand or demanding that I back away. Trent is standing completely frozen. His smooth, wealthy entrepreneur persona has entirely evaporated. He is staring at the framed photograph of Zuri, which my father dropped onto the stage floor in his shock. Trent is pale. His skin has turned a sickly ash-gray color under the bright stage lights. Sweat is actively beading at his temples and rolling down his neck, staining the collar of his expensive dress shirt. He looks like a man who has just been handed a death sentence. His breathing is shallow and rapid. His eyes are wide with a sheer terror that has absolutely nothing to do with family drama intercepted mail or his wife's supposed panic attack. As the murmurs of the crowd swell into a chaotic roar, and my mother continues to shout for a waiter to bring a glass of water, Trent suddenly moves. He lunges forward, bypassing my father completely, and grabs Chloe by the arm. His grip is viciously tight, his fingers digging into her bare skin with brutal force. Chloe stops her theatrical hyperventilating for a split second. She looks up at her husband in genuine shock. She clearly expects him to play the role of her fierce protector, to yell at me and carry her off the stage to safety. Instead, Trent leans down, his face inches from hers. His eyes are wild, entirely consumed by a deep, dark financial panic. Over the noise of the ballroom, I catch the exact words he hisses frantically into her ear. "You said the trust was guaranteed." The words hung in the air between my sister and her husband, a venomous secret completely ignored by my father. Jeremiah did not care about trust funds. He did not care about intercepted mail or certified delivery receipts. He only cared about the 300 elite guests watching his perfect family crumble under the bright stage lights. He barked into the microphone, his voice echoing violently across the expansive ballroom. "Security! Clear the stage immediately. We are moving this to the private antechamber right now." Two massive security guards in dark suits materialized at the base of the carpeted steps. They marched up with military precision and began ushering us toward the side exit. The walk through the ballroom felt like a slow-motion parade of absolute humiliation, but I refused to bow my head. I kept my chin high, my posture perfectly straight, my heels clicking a steady, unbothered rhythm against the hardwood floor. Beside me, Isaiah walked with the relaxed, predatory grace of a man who held all the winning cards in his pocket. On the other side of the guards, the contrast was pathetic. Chloe stumbled deliberately, leaning all her dead weight on my mother, gasping for air in her entirely manufactured panic attack. Trent trailed behind them, dragging his feet like a man walking to his own execution, his eyes completely hollow and unfocused. The heavy mahogany doors of the VIP antechamber swung open. We filed inside, and the security guards pulled the solid doors shut behind us. The sudden silence was deafening. It cut off the smooth jazz band and the frantic buzzing whispers of the Atlanta elite. The antechamber smelled of expensive cigar smoke, aged leather, and harsh floor polish. It was a room specifically designed for quiet handshakes, exclusive networking, and backdoor deals. It was not built to contain a family implosion of this magnitude. Jeremiah did not waste a single second. He did not turn to Chloe and demand to know why she had committed a federal offense by stealing my mail. He did not look at Trent, who had collapsed heavily into a high-backed leather chair, burying his sweating face in his hands. Jeremiah turned his massive, imposing presence entirely on me. His face, usually a carefully constructed mask of charming authority, was twisted into a dark, ugly snarl. He slammed his fist down hard on the center conference table, rattling the crystal water pitchers and vibrating the heavy wood. "You had a child out of wedlock and hid her from this family," he roared. His voice bounced off the wood-paneled walls, thick with absolute disgust. He paced the length of the room, throwing his arms in the air, asking the ceiling how I could be so selfish, so reckless, so utterly devoid of basic class. "You stood up there and humiliated me in front of my investors. You paraded your shame in front of the board members and the pastor of our church. You live like a tramp, you hide your bastard child like a dirty secret, and then you use my 40th anniversary gala to drag our flawless reputation through the mud. You are a complete disgrace to the legacy I spent my entire life building." He kept shouting, his face turning a dangerous shade of red, but I did not flinch. I did not cry. 10 years ago, his venomous words would have shattered me into a million pieces. I would have internalized every single insult, believing with my whole heart that I was the broken, defective, unlovable piece of this family. But standing there in my tailored blazer, knowing my corporate net worth rivaled his, and my soul was completely free of his financial control. His screaming just sounded like pathetic, desperate noise. I watched my mother stroke Chloe's hair in the corner, cooing soft, validating words of comfort to a 32-year-old woman who had just been caught in a massive calculating lie. The dysfunction was so glaringly obvious it was almost comical. Before I could even formulate a response to his unhinged accusations, Isaiah stepped forward. He moved with a calm, deliberate energy that instantly sucked the oxygen right out of Jeremiah's fiery tirade. Isaiah did not raise his voice. He did not posture, shout, or threaten. He simply reached into the inner breast pocket of his custom suit jacket. He pulled out a crisp, neatly folded piece of thick, watermarked parchment paper. He smoothed it out with his large hands and placed it perfectly in the center of the mahogany table, directly under the warm glow of the overhead chandelier. Maya did not have a child out of wedlock, Isaiah said smoothly. His voice was deep, resonant, and carried the unmistakable, unwavering authority of a senior corporate attorney addressing a hostile witness. That is our legal marriage certificate. We eloped exactly 3 years ago in a private ceremony on the coast. Jeremiah stopped pacing abruptly. His highly polished dress shoes squeaked against the floor. He stared at the piece of paper as if it were a live explosive. Isaiah kept speaking systematically and ruthlessly, dismantling my father's ridiculous narrative. We kept our marriage completely private because my wife had absolutely no interest in negotiating the terms of her own happiness. We wanted no part of Vivian demanding a $200,000 wedding budget just so she could pack the pews with her country club socialite friends and explicitly exclude Maya's actual colleagues. We had absolutely no desire to deal with you trying to force a restrictive prenuptial agreement that would give your estate leverage over Maya's independent wealth management firm. So we chose peace. We built our lives, our marriage, and our family completely free from your toxic, controlling circus. My father stood frozen in place. The realization that his designated scapegoat daughter was legally married to a highly successful attorney and had been happily married for years without his knowledge or permission completely short-circuited his brain. He stared down at the certificate, the raised gold seal, gleaming in the ambient light, verifying that Zuri was indeed the legitimate, legally recognized firstborn grandchild of this family. It was irrefutable proof that I had succeeded in every area of life where they had constantly told me I was failing. But the objective truth did not matter to my mother. It never had. Vivian completely ignored the legal document resting on the polished table. She did not even glance at it. She did not look at me. She did not ask a single question about her new legitimate granddaughter. She did not acknowledge my husband, or the fact that her eldest daughter had been married for 3 years. Instead, she physically turned her back on the evidence of my successful life. She rushed forward and threw her arms tightly around Chloe, entirely dismissing my hidden marriage and my child. She immediately began spinning a new web of delusions, rushing to build an impenetrable fortress of excuses around the golden daughter who had actually betrayed them all. My mother. Vivian did not even spare a passing glance at the official marriage certificate resting under the bright chandelier light on the polished mahogany table. To a woman like her, legal proof and objective reality were entirely irrelevant the moment they contradicted her preferred narrative. She physically turned her back on Isaiah and me. The heavy sequins of her expensive evening gown caught the light as she rushed across the antechamber to wrap her arms around my sister. Chloe was currently slumped dramatically against the tufted leather sofa. Her face was buried deep in her hands, and her shoulders were heaving with loud, perfectly practiced sobs. Vivian stroked her hair with frantic, soothing motions, glaring at me over Chloe's shaking form with a look of absolute, unadulterated venom. She completely ignored the staggering fact that her eldest daughter had just introduced her to her very first grandchild. Instead, she made the immediate, conscious decision to rewrite the entire situation on the spot to maintain her illusion of control. Chloe was simply protecting us. Jeremiah, my mother cried out. Her voice echoed shrilly in the confined, soundproofed space, vibrating against the dark wood paneling. She pulled Chloe tighter against her chest, casting me as the ultimate villain in her distorted reality. Maya sneaking around the city, marrying in secret, and having a baby behind our backs is shameful. It is a complete and utter disgrace to everything this family stands for. Chloe knew my blood pressure could not possibly handle the public scandal of a hidden pregnancy in our social circle. She intercepted that mail to protect my health and to protect your reputation. She was doing a good thing. She was being a loyal daughter. I stood there in the center of the room, listening to the sheer, breathtaking absurdity of her logic. My mother was actually attempting to frame federal mail theft and a 9-month campaign of deception as an act of pure filial devotion. It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. In Vivian's twisted world, my legal marriage and perfectly healthy child were a scandalous disgrace that needed to be punished. But my younger sister manipulating the entire family was a heroic act of protection that demanded immediate comfort. Hearing our mother's ridiculous defense, Chloe immediately recognized her opening and leaned heavily into her role as the fragile, victimized golden child. She let out a loud, theatrical wail and clutched her slightly rounded stomach with both hands. She looked up at my father, ensuring her mascara was smudged just enough to look suitably distressed, but still photogenic for the cameras waiting outside. "It is true," Daddy, Chloe gasped. Her breath caught in a broken rhythm that belonged on a daytime television drama. "I saw the mail arrive at the house, and I just panicked. I knew how much it would hurt you and Mom to find out Maya shut you out of her life on purpose. And now she is doing this tonight right in front of all your important friends and investors. She just wants to destroy my happiness. She has always been jealous of me because I do things the right way." Chloe squeezed her eyes shut and let out a sharp, piercing cry, doubling over slightly on the leather sofa. "The stress of her selfishness is hurting my baby. I can physically feel it. She is trying to cause a medical emergency because she is so bitter and hateful." The manipulation was brutally transparent to anyone paying attention, but my father had spent his entire adult life wearing custom-made blinders when it came to his youngest daughter. The very second Chloe mentioned her unborn child being in distress, Jeremiah's entire demeanor shifted. The genuine confusion and shock that had temporarily paralyzed him just seconds ago melted away completely. It was replaced entirely by an overbearing, aggressive need to protect his favorite child from the monster he believed I was. He stepped away from the table where my valid marriage certificate lay ignored. He marched over to stand like a sentinel beside his weeping daughter. He placed a heavy, comforting hand on Chloe's shoulder, validating her fake performance completely. Then he turned his furious, dark gaze back to me. His chest puffed out as he fully embraced his role as the righteous patriarch defending the innocent. "Look at what you are doing to your pregnant sister," Jeremiah boomed. His voice vibrated with misplaced authority and deep-seated arrogance. "You come in here with your pathetic secrets and your spite, deliberately trying to cause a medical emergency on the most important night of her life. You are selfish, Maya. You have always been a selfish, difficult child. I do not care about your piece of paper on that table. I do not care about your excuses. You will apologize to Chloe right this second. You will beg for her forgiveness for causing this kind of physical distress, and then you and your husband will leave my property immediately before I have security throw you out into the street." The sheer breathtaking audacity of his demand hung heavy in the stale air of the VIP room. He wanted me to apologize for existing. He wanted me to apologize for exposing a massive lie that had deliberately stolen my daughter's rightful place in this family. He actually expected me to bow my head, swallow my pride, and beg for forgiveness from the very woman who had actively tried to erase my child from reality. Isaiah shifted his weight beside me. His jaw tightened dangerously as he prepared to step forward and shut my father down, but I placed a firm, gentle hand on his arm to stop him. I did not need my brilliant attorney husband to fight this specific battle for me. I had been waiting my entire life to fight it myself. I looked at my father standing tall and self-righteous in his expensive tuxedo. I looked at my mother viciously shielding the deceitful daughter she had molded in her own image. And I looked at Chloe peeking at me through her fingers to see if her performance had finally broken my spirit. 10 years ago, the combined weight of their disappointment would have crushed me. I would have cried. But tonight I did not feel an ounce of guilt. I felt absolutely nothing but a cold, hard, razor-sharp clarity. I smiled. It was a slow, freezing smile that held zero warmth and zero submission. The unexpected expression caught my father completely off guard, making his authoritative posture falter for a split second. "I am not apologizing to anyone in this room," I said. My voice was perfectly calm and completely steady in the face of their manufactured hysteria. "I am not apologizing for my marriage. I am not apologizing for my beautiful daughter, and I am certainly not apologizing to a grown woman who committed fraud just to keep herself in the spotlight." My father opened his mouth to shout another angry demand, but I cut him off by turning my head entirely away from my toxic blood relatives. I shifted my focus to the one person in the room who had remained completely silent since the heavy wooden doors closed. Trent was still leaning heavily against the dark mahogany wall near the corner of the room. He had not rushed to his wife's side when she cried out in pain. He had not offered a single word of support or comfort to the family he married into. He was physically present in the room, but mentally he was trapped in an absolute nightmare. His skin was slick with a cold, greasy sweat. His hands were shaking visibly where they gripped the edge of a decorative side table. I took a slow, deliberate step toward him, letting the silence stretch out until the entire room was forced to notice his bizarre, terrifying behavior. Chloe's fake sobbing slowly died down as she realized my attention was no longer on her. My parents turned their heads, finally taking in the sight of their perfect son-in-law, looking like he was about to collapse. I tilted my head, studying Trent's panicked, pale face with calculated precision. "Tell me something, Trent," I asked. My voice rang out with crystal clear intent slicing through the tension. "Why exactly do you look like you are about to throw up over a picture of a 9-month-old baby?" I repeat the question, my voice dropping to a low, lethal register that cuts through the lingering tension in the antechamber. "Why exactly do you look like you are about to throw up over a picture of a 9-month-old baby, Trent?" Trent opens his mouth, but only a pathetic, raspy sound escapes his throat. He takes a clumsy step backward, his shoulder bumping hard against the heavy leather armchair. He cannot tear his eyes away from the photograph still resting on the floor. His hands are trembling so violently that he has to shove them deep into the pockets of his tailored trousers just to hide the shaking. The golden boy, the charismatic entrepreneur my parents have spent years worshipping, is currently falling apart at the seams. Jeremiah steps into my line of sight, his face flushing a deep, dangerous purple. He attempts to reassert his dominance, puffing out his chest and throwing his shoulders back. "Stop harassing my son-in-law, Maya. You are completely out of line. You do not get to come in here, flaunt your secret mistakes, and then interrogate my family." Vivian immediately chimes in, her hand still rubbing soothing circles on Chloe's back. "We are not talking about Trent. We are talking about the physical distress you are causing your pregnant sister. You are sick, Maya. You need professional help." I ignore them both entirely. I do not spare them a single glance. I simply turn my back on my parents, walk over to the polished side table where I left my designer handbag, and reach inside. My fingers close around the cold, smooth aluminum casing of my iPad. I pull it out and tap the screen. The bright, sterile glow of the device illuminates my face, a sharp contrast to the warm, old-money ambiance of the cigar room. I turn back to face my family. I look directly at my father, who is currently opening his mouth to deliver another blistering lecture about my lack of respect. "For the last 5 years, you have told everyone in your country club circle that my wealth management firm is just a cute little boutique project." I say, my voice perfectly level and projecting absolute authority. "You told your board members, your friends, and your investors that I was just playing with spreadsheets until I finally decided to give up and come crawling back to the family business." Vivian rolls her eyes, letting out a sharp sigh of exasperation. "We are not talking about your insignificant career right now, Maya. We are talking about the damage you are doing to this family tonight. We are talking about my career, Mom, because my career is the exact reason you are not about to be homeless." I shoot back. That single sentence wipes the arrogant condescension right off her face. Her hand freezes on Chloe's shoulder. Jeremiah's jaw snaps shut. The absolute certainty in my tone forces the room into a sudden, breathless silence. I tap the screen of my iPad, bypassing the security lock and opening a highly encrypted confidential file. 3 weeks ago, my firm finalized a massive corporate acquisition. We bought out the entire commercial debt portfolio of Apex Financial, one of the largest private lenders on the East Coast. It was a massive, ruthless corporate takeover. The exact kind of high-level financial maneuvering you always claimed I was fundamentally incapable of executing. Jeremiah scoffs, crossing his arms over his chest in a defensive posture. Congratulations on buying bad debt. What in the world does your little business deal have to do with you ruining my 40th anniversary gala? I walk slowly across the expensive Persian rug until I am standing directly in front of my father. I do not shrink back from his imposing height. I hold the iPad up the bright screen, forcing him to look at the document displayed there. I didn't come here tonight just to introduce my daughter, Dad. I say, my tone dropping to a dangerous, icy whisper. I came because while I was personally auditing that newly acquired portfolio, I found a very interesting file with our family name heavily plastered all over it. I swipe my finger across the glass, bringing up the next document. It is a dense, heavily legally worded contract filled with financial jargon and strict penalty clauses. It seems Trent's newest tech startup, the one you have been bragging about to all your wealthy friends all year, the one you called a brilliant unicorn investment, is actually completely bankrupt. It is a sinking ship. It has been hemorrhaging money for 8 consecutive months. Trent lets out a choked, desperate gasp. He looks frantically at the heavy mahogany doors, as if calculating his chances of outrunning the security guards stationed outside. Chloe drops her hands from her stomach. Her fake distress is completely forgotten. She stands up straight, her brow furrowed in genuine confusion. Trent? What is she talking about? What does she mean, bankrupt? I keep my eyes locked entirely on my father, refusing to let him look away from the screen. Trent was desperate. The venture capitalists pulled out, the creditors were circling like sharks, and he needed a massive immediate injection of cash just to keep the lights on. He needed to maintain the illusion of being a highly successful CEO for you and for Chloe. So he went to Apex Financial and took out a high-risk short-term commercial loan for $3 million. Jeremiah's face twitches. He looks over at Trent, then back to me, desperately trying to maintain his arrogant facade. Trent's business ventures are his own concern. $3 million is a drop in the bucket in the tech world. He has plenty of personal assets to secure a standard commercial loan like that. No, he does not. I correct him smoothly, dismantling his delusion piece by piece. Because Trent's personal assets are already leveraged to the absolute hilt. They are drained dry to pay for the luxury sports cars, the designer watches, and the lavish month-long European vacations. Chloe demands to keep up her flawless social media lifestyle. Vivian gasps, stepping aggressively forward. Do not speak about your sister's lifestyle. Trent is a provider. I ignore my mother and thrust the iPad closer to Jeremiah's chest. The bank required a physical high-value asset as collateral for a $3 million bailout loan. Trent did not have one. But you do. I watch the exact second the catastrophic reality pierces through my father's supreme arrogance. His eyes widen in horror. The deep, angry flush of color rapidly drains from his face, leaving his skin looking frail and gray. His arms fall limply to his sides. He leveraged your house, Dad. I state, delivering the fatal blow with surgical precision. Trent used the family estate, the house you spent 40 years paying off, the crown jewel of your entire legacy and wealth. He put it up as collateral for his failing startup. The silence in the VIP room is absolute. It is a heavy, suffocating quiet, broken only by the sound of Trent's ragged, panicked breathing from the corner. My mother slowly lets go of Chloe. She takes a shaky, unsteady step backward, her manicured hand flying up to cover her mouth. Jeremiah, she whispers, her voice trembling with genuine, unfiltered terror. The estate, our home. Jeremiah stares at the glowing screen. His chest heaves up and down. He shakes his head violently, refusing to accept the reality sitting right in front of him. He points a shaking, furious finger at me. You are lying. He spits, his voice completely devoid of its usual booming power. You are a malicious liar, Maya. This is just another one of your vindictive, jealous games. I am the sole owner of that property. The deed is entirely in my name. Trent could not possibly use my estate as collateral because I never signed any loan agreement. He turns to Trent, desperate for validation. Tell her, Trent. Tell her she is a liar. I never signed anything. Trent does not speak. He shrinks back against the wall, looking like a cornered animal. He cannot meet my father's eyes. He cannot look at Chloe, who is staring at him with her mouth hanging wide open in horror. I do not break eye contact with my father. I let him stew in his denial for 3 agonizing seconds. Then I bring my thumb and index finger to the glass screen of the iPad. I pinch outward slowly and deliberately, zooming in on the bottom of the digital document. I enlarge the signature line until it fills the entire screen, making it impossible for him to look away or deny what is written there. There, in stark black ink, is the name Jeremiah Sterling. I know you didn't sign it, Dad, I say, my voice echoing coldly in the silent room, because you were in Europe with Mom when this loan was executed. You were completely out of the country. I point directly at the screen, right at the jagged, slightly uneven loops of the signature. And he forged your signature to do it. The morning sunlight pours through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office, casting sharp, clean angles across the polished glass of my desk. The air up here on the 42nd floor is cool and filtered a massive relief from the heavy, suffocating atmosphere of the country club antechamber the night before. I stand at the head of my conference table, wrapping up the morning briefing with my senior acquisitions team. We are finalizing the integration of the Apex financial portfolio, systematically moving millions of dollars in commercial debt into our own secure ledgers. I am completely in my element. I am sharp-focused and entirely unbothered by the emotional wreckage my family attempted to bury me under 12 hours ago. I dismiss the team with clear, concise directives. As the heavy frosted glass door clicks shut behind my lead auditor, the private line on my desk phone rings. I check the caller ID. The screen displays my father's private cell number. I let it ring twice before picking up the receiver. He does not say hello. He does not ask how I am doing. He certainly does not ask about Zuri, the granddaughter he just discovered exists, or about Isaiah, my husband of 3 years. Jeremiah operates exactly the way he always has, by completely erasing any reality that challenges his absolute authority. He launches right into his attack, his voice a low, abrasive bark vibrating through the speaker. You need to drop these ridiculous allegations against Trent. Immediately, my father demands. There is no hesitation in his tone, no lingering shock from the events of the gala. He has spent the entire night constructing a new version of reality, and he expects me to fall in line and accept it without question. You have severely overstepped your professional boundaries, Maya. You made a complete fool of yourself last night with that fabricated financial drama, and I am calling to tell you to back off. I lean back in my ergonomic leather chair and stare out at the sprawling Atlanta skyline. I do not interrupt him. I let him spin his web of desperate lies, listening to the frantic cadence beneath his commanding tone. I was fully aware of that commercial loan. Jeremiah claims, his voice dripping with forced confidence. He is doubling down, choosing to protect the man who committed a felony against him rather than admit his scapegoat daughter was right. Trent came to me months ago. His tech startup is a visionary enterprise, and like any new venture, it required a temporary injection of capital to scale up production. I willingly co-signed the paperwork. I offered the estate as collateral because a true patriarch supports his family's business ventures. It was a strategic internal family decision, and it is absolutely none of your concern. The sheer scale of his gaslighting is almost impressive. He is attempting to convince me that the forgery I saw with my own 2 eyes was actually a legitimate, authorized business deal. He is willing to risk his own home, the estate he spent 40 years building, just to keep the golden child's husband looking like a success. I want that file permanently buried, Jeremiah orders, shifting from defense to outright aggression. You are going to log into whatever system your firm uses, and you are going to clear that debt from the active ledger. You will restructure the loan, hide the paperwork, and ensure no regulatory scrutiny ever comes near the family name. If you refuse to protect your own blood, I will personally ensure your firm is blacklisted across this entire city. I will ruin your reputation before lunch. I let his threat hang in the air for a long, quiet moment. I take a sip of my black coffee, savoring the bitter, grounding taste. You were in Geneva, Dad, I say. My voice is perfectly smooth, devoid of any anger or intimidation. The silence on the other end of the line is absolute. I am looking at the digital copy of the loan agreement right now. I continue tapping the screen of my computer to pull up the high-resolution scan. The document was signed, dated, and notarized in a private bank office in downtown Atlanta on April 14th. You and Mom were on a 3-week wine tasting tour in Switzerland and Italy. You posted photos from a vineyard in Geneva on the exact day your signature supposedly appeared on this commercial loan. You did not co-sign anything. Trent forged your name and he bribed a notary to stamp it. He tries to stammer out an excuse, but I do not give him the space to breathe. You can lie to Mom, I tell him, my tone hardening into forged steel. You can lie to your country club friends, and you can certainly lie to yourself to save your precious ego. But do not ever call my office and attempt to gaslight me. I am the managing director of this firm. I own this debt now. I will not commit financial fraud. I will not bury a felony, and I will not compromise the integrity of my company to save a man who treated your life's work like a disposable ATM. The loan remains active. The payment is due in 30 days. If Trent defaults, I will personally initiate the foreclosure on your estate. I hang up the phone and place it face down on my desk. I do not feel an ounce of guilt. I feel a profound, sweeping sense of liberation. My father has made his choice. He has chosen to align himself with the liars and the frauds, and he will have to suffer the natural consequences of that loyalty. But as I stand up and walk over to the floor-to-ceiling window, my analytical mind begins to dissect the encounter. Jeremiah's reaction makes perfect dysfunctional sense. He is protecting his pride. But Trent's reaction at the gala last night is the anomaly I cannot ignore. I cross my arms, staring down at the tiny cars moving through the city streets far below. Trent was terrified when I revealed the fraudulent loan, which is the standard reaction for a man caught committing a massive financial crime. But that was not the moment he lost his mind. Trent looked like he was about to physically throw up when my father held the photograph of my daughter Zuri. The panic did not consume him over the forgery. The panic consumed him over the baby. I replay the scene in the VIP room over and over in my head. I remember the sickly ash-gray color of Trent's skin. I remember the vicious way he grabbed Chloe's arm, completely abandoning his supportive husband routine. The words he hissed into her ear ring loud and clear in my memory. You said the trust was guaranteed. The math simply does not make sense. Why was Trent so desperate for $3 million in cold hard cash? Why did he risk a federal prison sentence by forging the deed to a house he did not own? He must have believed he had a guaranteed way to pay the money back before the loan matured, before my father ever found out about the lien on the estate. He banked his entire survival, his freedom, and his reputation on a massive impending financial windfall. You said the trust was guaranteed. My grandfather, the founding patriarch of the family wealth, had established a highly secretive generational trust before he died 20 years ago. The details were kept strictly under wraps by my parents, used only as a vague threat or a promised reward to keep Chloe and me in line. But whatever the terms were, Trent clearly believed Chloe had met them. He believed her pregnancy was the key to unlocking millions of dollars. But my daughter is 9 months old. The realization hits me with the force of a freight train. Chloe is not giving birth to the first grandchild of this family. She is giving birth to the second. If my grandfather's trust was legally structured to release its funds upon the birth of the first legitimate heir of the next generation, then Chloe's child is entirely irrelevant. The trust belongs to Zuri. That is why Chloe intercepted the certified mail. That is why she hid the birth announcement and the baby shower invitations. She was not just trying to keep the social spotlight on herself. She was trying to conceal the existence of my daughter long enough to secure a multi-million-dollar payout. She needed my parents and the trust executors to believe her baby was the firstborn. And Trent knew. He knew he needed that specific trust money to pay off the forged $3 million loan before Apex Financial foreclosed on his father-in-law's estate. My baby's existence did not just bruise Trent's ego, it instantly bankrupted him and exposed him as a felon. I turn away from the window and walk purposefully back to my desk. I open my secure terminal and begin typing. I need to bypass my father's legal team and gain direct access to the original founding documents of my grandfather's generational trust. The game has just shifted, and it is time to drop the hammer. The heavy glass door of my office swings open just as I pull my hands away from my keyboard. Isaiah walks in, bringing the rich, savory scent of garlic and roasted tomatoes with him. He is wearing his signature tailored charcoal suit, balancing two takeout containers from my favorite Italian bistro in one hand. In his other hand, he clutches a thick, heavily sealed legal dossier. He bypasses the small dining area entirely and walks straight toward my desk, dropping the food containers onto a side table without a second glance. His jaw is set and his dark eyes are incredibly sharp. He tosses the heavy dossier right onto the center of my desk. The thick manila envelope lands with a heavy, satisfying thud against the polished wood. I told you to bypass my father's usual legal team, I say, eyeing the seal. Isaiah nods, loosening his silk tie and unbuttoning his suit jacket. I did better than that. I went straight to the state archival records and pulled the original filings. Jeremiah has spent 20 years using this trust as a ghost to keep everyone in line, but a legally binding generational wealth trust has to be registered. Your great-grandfather Sterling established this document 40 years ago. He was a ruthless industrialist, and he built this trust with ironclad trigger-based clauses that your father has absolutely no power to alter or amend. I reach forward and break the seal. The paper inside is thick, slightly yellowed at the edges, and dense with archaic financial jargon. I spread the documents out across the smooth surface of my desk. For the next 20 minutes, Isaiah and I do not touch our lunch. We stand shoulder to shoulder, our eyes scanning the dense paragraphs, sifting through pages of real estate holdings, locked stock portfolios, and conditional asset allocations. We are hunting for a very specific mechanism. We are looking for the exact reason Trent looked like he was staring down the barrel of a loaded gun when he saw a picture of a 9-month-old baby. Article 4, Section B, Isaiah says suddenly. His voice is low, vibrating with sudden intense clarity. He taps his index finger firmly against the middle of the 5th page. Read this paragraph. Read the exact wording. I lean over the document, my eyes tracing the dense text. The legal phrasing is incredibly specific, leaving absolutely zero room for interpretation or family maneuvering. Upon the verified legal birth registration of the firstborn grandchild of the Sterling direct bloodline. I read aloud, my voice steady in the quiet office. The primary trust shall authorize an immediate unencumbered liquidity disbursement of $5 million. This disbursement is to be transferred directly into a secured account for the benefit of the child and their immediate parents, to ensure the continued prosperity of the Sterling legacy. The words hang in the air between us. The sheer magnitude of the discovery hits me with the physical force of a sledgehammer. The temperature in the room seems to drop 10 degrees as the entire twisted puzzle suddenly snaps together with terrifying precision. It was never about my mother's blood pressure. It was never about Chloe throwing a tantrum because she wanted to be the center of attention at the anniversary gala. It was never about preserving the family reputation. It was about cold hard cash, $5 million of it. I look up at Isaiah. The realization is burning in my chest, replacing any lingering trace of familial hurt with a cold, absolute fury. Trent took out a $3 million loan from Apex Financial. I say, my mind racing as the timeline perfectly aligns. He used my father's forged signature and the family estate as collateral. It was a bridge loan. He needed massive immediate cash to keep his failing startup afloat and fool his venture capitalists into thinking he was still profitable. Isaiah crosses his arms, his legal mind moving just as fast as mine. Exactly. A high-risk short-term commercial loan. The kind of loan a desperate man only takes if he knows with absolute certainty that he has a guaranteed windfall coming his way before the bank calls to collect. I knew Chloe was pregnant. I continue, the disgusting reality of their scheme washing over me. They both knew they were expecting a child. They read my great-grandfather's trust document. They knew the very second their baby was born and a birth certificate was legally registered with the state, the trust would automatically release $5 million to them. Trent planned to take the $5 million, Isaiah says, finishing my thought. He planned to quietly pay off the $3 million loan to Apex Financial, clear the lien against your father's estate, before Jeremiah ever found out, and pocket the remaining $2 million to fund Chloe's lavish lifestyle. It was the perfect victimless corporate crime in his mind. Until I got pregnant, I whisper. I had Zuri 9 months ago. I had the firstborn grandchild. The second my daughter's birth certificate was registered, that $5 million disbursement legally belonged to my family, not theirs. Chloe and Trent's child would be the second grandchild. They would get absolutely nothing. That is why Chloe intercepted the certified mail. I say, my voice rising as the sheer breathtaking malice of my younger sister becomes fully illuminated. That is why she hid the birth announcements. That is why she engineered a 9-month campaign of absolute isolation, manipulating my parents into thinking I was deliberately shutting them out. She was not just being a narcissist, she was committing fraud. She had to ensure that Maya and Zuri remained completely off the family radar legally and socially until her own child was born and registered as the first grandchild. Isaiah nods slowly, his expression hardening into a look of pure disgust. If Chloe gave birth next month and filed the paperwork first, the trust administrators would release the funds to her. By the time anyone discovered Zuri existed, the $5 million would already be in Trent's offshore accounts, paying off his fraudulent debts. This explains Trent's visceral sweating terror in the VIP room last night. When I dropped that photograph of Zuri on the floor, Trent was not looking at a picture of his niece. He was looking at his own financial execution. He realized in a single shattering second that the $5 million was gone. The guaranteed windfall was a ghost. And worse, the $3 million loan he took from Apex Financial is coming due. The bank is going to come collecting, and Trent has absolutely no way to pay it. Except it is no longer just a bank coming to collect. Apex Financial does not own that debt anymore. I own it. My wealth management firm bought their entire commercial portfolio. Trent does not owe a faceless corporate entity $3 million. He owes me. My father's arrogant, demanding phone call from this morning suddenly looks incredibly pathetic. Jeremiah ordered me to bury the paperwork. He ordered me to drop the allegations and protect Trent to save the family name. My father is fiercely defending a man who forged his signature, secretly leveraged his 40-year legacy, and conspired with his youngest daughter to steal $5 million from his eldest grandchild. Jeremiah is violently protecting the very parasite that is actively bankrupting him. I reach out and place my hand flat against the thick trust document resting on my desk. The anger inside me solidifies into something dangerous, calculated, and totally unstoppable. Chloe and Trent thought they could erase my daughter from reality to fund their fake luxury lifestyle. They thought they could manipulate the entire family to steal what rightfully belonged to my child. I look up at Isaiah. A sharp, freezing smile spreads across my face. Call the asset recovery team, I tell my husband. My voice rings out with absolute lethal authority in the quiet office. Tell them to flag the Trent Sterling account. We are not waiting 30 days for the loan to mature. I want to initiate the preliminary foreclosure process on my father's estate today. It is time to show my sister exactly what happens when you try to steal from my daughter. I do not even have time to close the encrypted trust file on my monitor before the heavy glass and steel doors of my corner office violently burst open. They hit the doorstops with a sharp, echoing crack that makes my assistant let out a startled shriek from the reception bay. Trent shoves past her, completely ignoring the security protocols of my firm. He looks absolutely nothing like the polished, untouchable tech CEO who usually graces the covers of local Atlanta business magazines. His custom Italian suit jacket is wrinkled and hanging open. His silk tie is yanked down, resting loosely around his collar. His hair, usually styled to absolute perfection, is slicked to his forehead with cold sweat. He is breathing hard, his chest heaving as if he just sprinted up all 42 flights of stairs to reach my executive suite. My assistant rushes in right behind him, apologizing frantically and reaching for her security panic button. I raise my hand, giving her a sharp, silent signal to stop. I tell her it is fine and ask her to close the door behind her. Isaiah immediately steps away from the conference table, his tall frame shifting into a protective, highly alert stance. As a seasoned corporate attorney, he reads the manic desperation rolling off Trent in thick waves. He warns Trent that he has exactly 5 seconds to explain why he is trespassing in a secure financial firm before he has him arrested. Trent ignores Isaiah entirely. He zeroes in on me. He practically stumbles across the expansive room, his expensive leather shoes squeaking awkwardly against the polished hardwood floor. He reaches my desk and slams his hands down flat against the glass surface. He is shaking so badly that his gold cufflinks rattle against the glass. "You have to stop the foreclosure!" Trent gasps out his voice, a ragged, pathetic wheeze. He looks around the massive office, his eyes wide and panicked. "Maya, please, you have to call off your asset recovery team. They just froze my primary operating accounts. You are choking my company to death. Your company choked to death 8 months ago." "Trent," I state, my voice perfectly level and devoid of any sympathy, "I am simply the one organizing the funeral. The $3 million loan you fraudulently took from Apex Financial is now my property. You defaulted on the primary covenants the second you forged my father's signature." Trent shakes his head wildly in denial. He reaches into the inside breast pocket of his ruined suit jacket and pulls out a crisp, folded piece of paper. His hands are trembling violently as he unfolds it and slides it aggressively across my desk. It stops right over the digital projection of my great-grandfather's trust document. I look down. It is a cashier's check, certified and drawn from a private offshore account. The amount is written in bold, undeniable ink. $500,000. It is made payable directly to me. "Take it," Trent begs, his voice cracking with sheer, unfiltered desperation. "Take the $500,000. It is clean, untraceable cash. You can deposit it today. Just keep your kid a secret for 6 more months. That is all I am asking you to do. Just give me 6 months." The sheer breathtaking audacity of his demand actually makes me pause. He is standing in my corporate headquarters, sliding a bribe across my desk, asking me to erase my child's existence so he can steal her birthright. "You want me to hide Zuri?" I say, flatly repeating his insane request aloud to ensure I am hearing this correctly. "Yes," Trent practically sobs, leaning his weight heavily onto the desk. "You do not need the money, Maya. Look around you. You own a massive wealth management firm. You just bought out Apex Financial. You are wearing a watch that costs more than my entire car. You do not need that trust payout. But Chloe and I do. If Chloe gives birth and registers our baby first, the trust releases the $5 million to us immediately. I can pay off the Apex loan. I can clear the lien on your dad's estate. The family reputation stays perfectly intact. Everyone wins." Isaiah pulls his phone from his pocket, his expression hardening into pure disgust. He informs Trent that he is actively attempting to bribe a financial director to commit corporate and familial fraud, and that he is calling the police. Trent waves a frantic hand at Isaiah, dismissing him completely. "Chloe played the game, Maya. She stayed in Atlanta. She played the dutiful daughter. She went to all the country club dinners and rubbed elbows with your parents' obnoxious friends. She earned that money. You walked away. You do not get to come back 10 years later with a secret baby and steal her payout. I do not touch the check." I lean forward, resting my forearms on the desk, and lock eyes with him. "Let us get a few things perfectly clear, Trent," I say, dismantling his delusion piece by piece. "First, I am not stealing anything. My great-grandfather set up a legally binding trust for the firstborn grandchild of his bloodline. Zuri was born 9 months ago. That money belongs to my daughter. It is her legal birthright. Second, you are currently offering me $500,000 of stolen leveraged cash to sign away $5 million. I run a wealth management firm. Do I look like someone who takes a 90% loss on an investment?" Trent's face flushes a deep, ugly red. The pathetic begging routine instantly vanishes, replaced by the cornered, vicious entitlement of a man who has completely run out of options. He realizes I am not going to play his game. He realizes the smooth-talking charisma that works on my parents has absolutely zero effect on me. He glares at me, his eyes bloodshot and wide with manic fury. He plants both hands firmly on my desk and leans his face in so close I can see the sweat dripping down his temples. "You think you are so smart," Trent hisses, dropping the nice guy act entirely. "You think you hold all the cards because you bought my debt. But let me make this crystal clear for you, Maya. If you do not take this deal, if you register your kid and take that trust money today, I have absolutely no way to pay back that $3 million loan. None." He smiles. It is a twisted, ugly expression that reveals the true depths of his selfishness and his willingness to destroy anyone to save himself. And since you hold the deed as collateral, that means your firm has to foreclose on the property. Trent continues, his voice dripping with venom. If you do not let Chloe claim that trust your parents are going to be homeless, you will be the one throwing them out into the street. The silence that follows Trent's ultimate threat is thick enough to cut with a knife. He stands there, chest heaving, sweat beading on his forehead, waiting for his words to land. He genuinely believes he has just played his trump card. In his desperate, fractured mind, he assumes the idea of my parents losing their lavish estate and being thrown out into the street will instantly shatter my resolve. He expects me to shrink back, to panic, to revert to the obedient, approval-starved daughter I was a decade ago. I do not shrink. I do not blink. I look at his flushed, panicked face, and then I drop my gaze to the desk. The certified cashier's check sits perfectly centered on the glass surface. $500,000. A $500,000 bribe drawn from illicit, heavily leveraged funds offered up as the price for my daughter's erasure. It is the exact monetary value Trent has placed on my silence and Zuri's birthright. I reach out slowly. My fingers brush the crisp, heavily watermarked paper. I pick it up. Trent lets out a massive, shuddering breath. His shoulders instantly drop 3 inches. He runs a shaky hand through his sweat-slicked hair, a triumphant, greasy smirk beginning to form on his lips. He actually thinks he has won. He thinks I am weighing the money, calculating the payoff, accepting my designated role as the family secret keeper. I pivot my ergonomic leather chair just a few degrees to the right. Sitting flush against the mahogany credenza is a heavy-duty industrial cross-cut shredder. I reach out and flip the power switch. The machine hums to life, a low mechanical growl vibrating through the quiet office. Trent's smirk freezes. His eyes dart from the check in my hand to the machine, his brain struggling to process the visual information. I do not break eye contact with him. I hold the check directly over the feed slot. I let it slip from my fingers. The industrial blades bite into the thick paper instantly. The loud, aggressive grinding sound fills the room as the $500,000 bribe is violently pulled down and shredded into hundreds of meaningless confetti-sized strips. The entire transaction takes less than 4 seconds. Trent lets out a sound that I can only describe as a strangled, dying gasp. His face drains of all color, turning a sickly, translucent white. He lunges forward, his hands slapping uselessly against the glass desk, as if he can somehow reach into the plastic bin and piece the shredded paper back together. I do not take bribes from criminals, Trent. I state, my voice dropping to a lethal, razor-sharp register, and I certainly do not take orders from a man who is about to be indicted for federal bank fraud. You insane butch! Trent screams, his voice cracking violently. The polished, charismatic tech CEO is completely gone, replaced entirely by an unhinged, terrified fraud. He tries to lunge around the edge of the desk toward me. Isaiah moves faster. My husband closes the distance in a fraction of a second, planting both hands firmly on Trent's chest and shoving him backward with brutal, uncompromising force. Trent stumbles, his expensive leather shoes slipping wildly on the polished floor before his back slams hard against the conference table. Do not take another step, Isaiah warns, his voice deadly quiet and vibrating with absolute menace. I reach over to the sleek console on my desk and press the intercom button. Sharon, send security in. Now. Trent scrambles to regain his footing, his eyes wide and wild. You are destroying everything, he shouts, pointing a shaking finger at me. Your parents are going to lose their home. You are going to put your own mother and father on the street just to prove a point. They are losing their home because you forged a legal document and committed a felony. I correct him, entirely unmoved by his manufactured hysteria. I am simply the repo man. If my parents end up homeless, they can move into whatever jail cell you occupy for the next 10 years. I will not bury your crimes. I will not hide my child. I am foreclosing on the estate, and I am alerting the trust administrators to Zuri's birth registration today. The heavy glass doors of my office fly open. 2 towering corporate security guards step inside, their expressions grim and strictly professional. They do not hesitate. They move straight toward Trent, grabbing him roughly by both arms. Trent thrashes against them, fighting like a cornered animal. Get your hands off me, he roars, trying to rip his arms free. He turns his head back toward me as they begin dragging him backward toward the door. You are nothing but a jealous, bitter mistake. Your family hates you. Maya Chloe is going to ruin you. The guards haul him backward, his heels scuffing loudly across the floor. He continues screaming, his frantic, desperate insults echoing down the long, marbled hallway. The sound fades only when my assistant rushes forward and pulls the heavy glass doors tightly shut, sealing the noise outside. The sudden silence in the office is profound. The air feels lighter, cleaner, stripped of Trent's toxic, suffocating panic. Isaiah stands near the edge of the desk, adjusting the cuffs of his suit jacket. He looks down at the shredder bin, then up at me. A slow, deeply impressed smile spreads across his face. He walks around the desk, places his hands on my shoulders, and presses a firm kiss to the top of my head. You handled that flawlessly, Isaiah says, his voice rough with pride. The asset recovery team is already drafting the preliminary foreclosure notices. Apex Financial will formally notify your father by the end of the business day. I let out a long, steady breath, feeling the adrenaline slowly recede from my veins. The power dynamic has irrevocably shifted. I am no longer the discarded, overlooked middle child begging for scraps of validation from people who despise my independence. I hold their entire financial future in the palm of my hand, and I have absolutely no intention of showing them the mercy they consistently denied me. Suddenly, the screen of my personal cell phone lights up, vibrating sharply against the glass desktop. I glance down. The caller ID does not show my father. It shows Vivian. My mother never texts me. In the 5 years since I launched my firm, she has only communicated through my father or through passive-aggressive social media posts. For her to reach out directly, especially the morning after the disastrous gala, is entirely unprecedented. I pick up the phone and tap the screen to open the message. The text is short, overly familiar, and completely unhinged, given the events of the last 12 hours. Sunday dinner at 6. Bring the baby. We want to be a family again. I stare at the glowing words, my mind instantly analyzing the angle. The whiplash is jarring. Less than 24 hours ago, Vivian was standing in the country club cigar room, physically shielding Chloe and screaming that I was a sick, vindictive disgrace. She watched my father order security to throw me out. Now she suddenly wants to host a cozy Sunday dinner. She wants to meet the granddaughter she tried to pretend did not exist. Isaiah leans over my shoulder, reading the text on the screen. He lets out a sharp, humorless scoff. They must have spoken to Trent. They did, I confirm, locking the phone screen and tossing the device back onto the desk. Trent failed to bribe me, and my father failed to intimidate me. They realize the legal threats are useless and the foreclosure is imminent. I look out the window at the sprawling city, a cold, calculated clarity settling deep into my bones. This is not an olive branch, it is a trap. Vivian and Jeremiah are pivoting their strategy. If they cannot force me into submission, they are going to try to manipulate their way back into my life long enough to convince me to drop the debt. They think they can play the loving grandparents, manipulate my emotions, and use the concept of family unity as a weapon to save their estate. They are about to find out just how drastically they have underestimated me. The iron gates of my parents' estate swing open, granting us access to the sprawling, manicured grounds I spent my entire childhood trying to escape. Isaiah navigates the winding gravel driveway, the tires crunching loudly in the quiet evening air. In the back seat, Zuri babbles happily, entirely unaware that she is the epicenter of a multi-million-dollar war. Isaiah parks the car near the grand entrance. He unbuckles Zuri, securing her carefully against his broad chest in her carrier. I do not bother ringing the doorbell. I use the key I have kept on my ring for a decade, pushing open the heavy mahogany front doors. I expect the rich, familiar scent of Vivian's Sunday roast, or the sound of classical music drifting through the foyer. Instead, the house is dead quiet. There is no dinner cooking. There is no warmth. The air feels sterile and entirely devoid of life. We walk past the darkened kitchen and step into the formal dining room. The scene waiting for us is staged like a corporate tribunal. There are no plates, no silverware, no wine glasses on the massive oak dining table. Jeremiah sits rigidly at the head of the table, his face a mask of absolute authority. Vivian sits to his right, her hands wringing a silk handkerchief, her eyes red and puffy. Chloe and Trent sit opposite her. Trent looks completely broken, his skin a sickly pale gray. Chloe is glaring at me with a hatred so pure it practically radiates across the room. Sitting quietly next to my father is Arthur Vance, the family's longtime estate lawyer. No one stands to greet us. No one even looks at the beautiful 9-month-old girl cooing against Isaiah's chest. They do not see a grandchild or a niece. They see a financial liability. I pull out a chair and sit down, crossing my legs gracefully. Isaiah remains standing right behind me, a silent, imposing guardian. Jeremiah does not waste time with pleasantries. He reaches into a leather folder, pulls out a crisp, single-page document, and slides it firmly across the polished wood. It stops right in front of me. A silver pen rolls to a halt next to it. "You have made your point," Jeremiah states, his voice carrying that familiar commanding cadence he uses to bully his subordinates. "You are a success. You have built your little empire. You are wealthy in your own right. You do not need the trust money." I look down at the paper. It is a legally binding waiver, drafted to permanently and irrevocably relinquish Zuri's status as the firstborn grandchild of the Sterling bloodline. It is a legal erasure of my daughter. "Sign this waiver relinquishing Zuri's status as the firstborn," my father orders, leaning back in his chair. "It changes absolutely nothing about your day-to-day life, but it fixes everything for this family. You will sign the paper, Arthur will notarize it tonight, and we will put this entire ugly misunderstanding behind us." Before I can even process the sheer breathtaking audacity of his demand, Vivian cracks. She leans forward, tears streaming down her perfectly contoured face. "Maya, please," my mother begs, her voice breaking into a pathetic, desperate sob. "Just sign the paper. Chloe's baby needs the money. Trent's business is struggling, and if they do not get that trust disbursement to save his business, Apex Financial is going to foreclose on this house. We will lose the estate. Keep the family estate out of foreclosure. Please, Maya, do it for the family." I stare at the silver pen resting on the polished oak. I refuse to touch it. I slowly lift my gaze, meeting my mother's tear-streaked face, then my father's arrogant stare. The absolute staggering hypocrisy of the people sitting at this table makes the air in the room feel heavy. "Let me make sure I fully understand the situation," I say, my voice dropping to a freezing, razor-sharp register. "You dragged me here under the guise of a family dinner. You ignored the existence of your own granddaughter who is sitting right in front of you, and now you are begging me to sign away her legal birthright. You are perfectly willing to strip your actual firstborn grandchild of her birthright to cover up a white man's financial crimes simply because Chloe is the golden child." Arthur Vance, the lawyer, shifts uncomfortably in his seat. Trent swallows hard, refusing to look at me. "You are asking me to aid and abet a felony," I continue, my tone turning into forged steel. "You want me to participate in bank fraud so Trent can pay back a loan he secured by forging your signature, Dad. You are willing to sacrifice my daughter's future because you cannot bear the social embarrassment of admitting your son-in-law is a criminal." Chloe absolutely loses her mind. She slams both her hands down flat against the table, the impact echoing sharply through the large room. "You are a bitter outcast," Chloe screams, her face contorting with rage. "You have always hated me. You have always hated this family. You planned this just to ruin my life. You just want to see the family destroyed because Mom and Dad always loved me more." I do not flinch. I do not raise my voice. I let her scream until her lungs give out, watching her toxic, unhinged entitlement fully expose itself. When the echo of her shouting finally dies down, the room falls into a suffocating silence. I look past my sister, ignoring her completely, and lock eyes with the family lawyer. I give the aging attorney a slow, calculating smile. "You can't execute that waiver anyway, Arthur," I tell him calmly. Jeremiah frowns, his authoritative facade cracking for the first time. "What are you talking about? Of course he can execute it. You just need to sign it." I do not look at my father. I reach down into the side pocket of Zuri's designer diaper bag resting by my feet. My fingers close around a thick, heavily sealed envelope. I pull it out and toss it onto the center of the dining table. It lands right on top of Jeremiah's pathetic waiver. "I legally registered Zuri's birth certificate with the Grand Trustee in New York 4 months ago," I announce. The words hit the room like a physical shockwave. Trent lets out a strangled gasp, burying his face in his hands. Chloe freezes her eyes locked onto the sealed envelope in pure horror. The trust executors verified her DNA, confirmed her status as the firstborn of the Sterling line, and executed the mandate exactly as my great-grandfather intended. I continue watching my father's face drain of all color. The $5 million was already dispersed to me. I stand up, smoothing out the front of my jacket. Isaiah steps back, resting a protective hand on Zuri's head. The money has been gone for months, I tell them, delivering the final fatal blow to their delusion. And I know exactly where it is. The absolute silence in the dining room holds for exactly one heartbeat before the entire facade of the Sterling family completely detonates. Chloe lets out a sound that is half scream, half primal shriek. Her chair scrapes violently against the hardwood floor as she launches herself forward. She does not just stand up. She lunges straight across the polished oak dining table, her manicured hands hooked like claws aiming directly for my face. A crystal centerpiece shatters as her knee clips it, sending water and white roses cascading across the wood. She never even gets close to me. Isaiah moves with terrifying speed. He steps in front of me, his broad shoulders completely shielding Zuri and me from my sister's unhinged assault. He catches Chloe by her wrists mid-lunge, his grip firm and immovable. He does not hurt her, but he forcefully shoves her backward. Chloe stumbles, her expensive heels slipping on the spilled water, and she crashes hard back into her dining chair. "Do not ever try to touch my wife again," Isaiah warns. His voice is a low, dangerous rumble that instantly freezes the air in the room. "If you take one more step toward my family, I will have you arrested for assault before you can even blink." Chloe collapses into her chair, sobbing hysterically, her perfect makeup running down her face in dark, ugly streaks. She looks completely pathetic, stripped of her usual smug superiority. Across the room, Trent is having a full mental collapse. He pushes away from the table, his hands gripping his hair as he begins to pace frantically back and forth across the Persian rug. He looks like a caged animal. His breathing is shallow and rapid. He is muttering to himself, shaking his head violently as the reality of his situation crushes him. "It is gone!" Trent gasps, his eyes wide and unfocused. "The $5 million is gone. The bridge loan is due. Apex is going to liquidate everything. The investors are going to file federal charges. I am going to prison." "Shut up," Trent Jeremiah roars. My father shoots up from his chair. His face is a dark mottled purple, the veins in his neck bulging against his stiff white collar. The illusion of the calm, calculating patriarch has evaporated completely. He is looking at the ruins of his legacy, his golden child sobbing, his son-in-law confessing to federal crimes, and the daughter he discarded holding the single key to their survival. Jeremiah slams his fist down onto the oak table. The impact rattles the remaining crystal glasses. He points a shaking, furious finger directly at my face. "You listen to me right now, Maya," my father orders. His voice is booming, the same tone he used to terrify me when I was a child. But I am not a child anymore, and his anger means absolutely nothing to me. "You are going to undo this. I do not care what kind of stunt you pulled with the trust administrators in New York. You are going to pull up your banking app, and you are going to wire that $5 million directly into Trent's operating account. You are going to do it right this second." I stare at him, perfectly composed. "You want me to wire $5 million of my daughter's legal inheritance to a man who committed bank fraud? I want you to save this family from ruin," Jeremiah shouts, leaning heavily over the table. "Do you understand what is at stake here? If Trent defaults, the bank takes this estate. They take the house. Your mother and I will lose everything we have built. Chloe's reputation will be destroyed. You have your own wealth, Maya. You have your firm. You do not need this money. You are going to transfer those funds and save your family." Vivian rushes to his side, clutching his arm. She looks at me with wide, pleading eyes. "Maya, please," she begs, her voice trembling with manufactured despair. "Your father is right. We made mistakes, yes. But you cannot do this to your sister. Chloe's baby needs a future. Trent's business needs capital. You have to save us. We can put all of this behind us and be a family again. Just transfer the money." I look around the room, letting the sheer absurdity of their demands wash over me. For my entire life, they told me I was not good enough. They told me I was a disappointment. They hid my daughter's existence because it threatened their perfect narrative. And now they are demanding that I hand over $5 million of my own child's money to bail out a criminal, all to protect the golden child who conspired to steal from me in the first place. They expect me to fall in line. They expect the scapegoat to sacrifice herself to save the favorites. Arthur Vance, the family lawyer, slowly closes his leather briefcase. He refuses to meet Jeremiah's eyes. As a seasoned attorney, he knows exactly what my great-grandfather's trust document states. He knows that once the Grand Trustee verifies the birth certificate and disperses the funds, the transaction is absolute. There is no legal maneuvering. There are no loopholes. The money legally belongs to me as Zuri's guardian, and no court in the country would force me to hand it over to a brother-in-law facing federal fraud charges. Jeremiah sees Arthur closing his briefcase and his panic spikes. "Do it, Maya," he demands, his voice cracking with desperation. "Transfer the money now, I do not move." I let the silence stretch, forcing them to sit in their own escalating terror. I look at Trent, who has stopped pacing and is staring at me with hollow, begging eyes. I look at Chloe, who has stopped sobbing long enough to glare at me with venomous hope. I look at my father, whose entire world is balancing on the edge of a cliff. I sit back calmly in my chair. I reach up and casually adjust the lapels of my tailored blazer, making sure the fabric sits perfectly smooth. I meet my father's furious, desperate gaze, and I give him a slow, razor-sharp smile. "I didn't keep the money in a savings account, Dad. I spent it." The silence in the dining room shatters the moment the words leave my mouth. Jeremiah grips the edges of the heavy oak table so tightly his knuckles turn stark white. His chest heaves, his breathing ragged and uneven. He looks at me as if I have just grown a second head. "You spent $5 million. Jeremiah repeats, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that steadily builds into a deafening roar. "You squandered $5 million of family capital. On what? A new mansion? A fleet of cars? You threw away your own sister's salvation out of spite." I do not raise my voice. I do not flinch. I let his fury crash against a wall of absolute, unbreakable calm. I smooth my hands flat against the polished wood of the table, making sure my posture communicates total control. "I did not squander a single cent. Dad," I say, my voice ringing out with crystal clarity. "I am a financial director. I do not buy depreciating assets. I made a highly strategic, incredibly lucrative corporate investment." I turn my gaze slowly toward Trent. The color has entirely drained from his face. He looks like a man standing on the gallows waiting for the floor to drop beneath his feet. He has stopped pacing. He is frozen in place, staring at me with a horrified, dawning realization in his eyes. His breathing is shallow and rapid. He knows exactly what I'm about to say before the words even leave my mouth. 4 months ago, I explained, keeping my eyes locked on my brother-in-law. The Grand Trustee in New York legally verified Zuri's birth certificate. The $5 million disbursement was wired directly into my secure accounts. At that exact same time, Apex Financial was looking to offload a large portfolio of high-risk commercial debt. They needed immediate liquidity, and my wealth management firm was actively looking to acquire new assets. It was a perfect match. I used the $5 million from my great-grandfather's trust to purchase that entire debt portfolio in cash. Chloe frowns, her perfectly manicured hands twisting in her lap. Her eyes dart nervously between Trent and me. She is struggling to follow the corporate terminology, but she can read the absolute terror radiating from her husband. "What does that mean?" "That mean," Chloe demands, her voice shrill and trembling. "Why do we care what you bought with your stolen money?" "It means I bought Trent," I answer simply. The room goes dead quiet again. Arthur Vance, the family lawyer, slowly lowers his head, rubbing his temples as the full scope of my legal trap becomes apparent. "I bought the debt, Chloe." I continue, speaking slowly so every single syllable lands with maximum impact. "Trent took out a $3 million commercial bridge loan from Apex Financial to save his failing tech startup. When I purchased their portfolio, I acquired that loan. I am the primary debt holder. Trent does not owe a faceless bank $3 million. He owes me." Trent lets out a strangled, pathetic sound. He braces his hands on the back of a dining chair, his knuckles white, his entire body shaking. "You thought you were so brilliant, Trent," I say, my tone stripping away the last remnants of his dignity. "You thought you had orchestrated the perfect crime. You knew your tech company was bleeding cash. You knew your venture capitalists were about to demand an audit, so you took out a massive high-interest loan to cover your tracks. But you needed collateral. You did not have any assets left to pledge. So you forged my father's signature and used this family estate to secure the cash. Jeremiah gasps, falling back into his chair, as if he has been physically struck. He looks at Trent then at Arthur, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of the betrayal. You banked your entire survival on Chloe's pregnancy, I state, laying out the exact mechanics of their greed. You read the trust documents. You knew the firstborn grandchild triggered a $5 million payout. You planned to take that money quietly, pay off the Apex loan before it matured, clear the lien on this house before my father ever found out, and pocket the remaining $2 million. It was a flawless plan. Except you forgot one crucial detail. You forgot that I had a child first. Chloe shakes her head wildly, tears streaming down her face. She looks at Trent, waiting for him to deny it, waiting for him to spin one of his smooth, charismatic lies and tell her that everything is going to be fine. Trent says nothing. He just stares at the floor, completely broken. I turn my attention to Arthur Vance. The lawyer meets my gaze, his expression grim and resigned. Arthur, as a seasoned estate and corporate attorney, you know exactly how commercial loan covenants function. I say, my voice carrying the sharp, authoritative edge of an executive. When I took ownership of the Apex portfolio, my team ran a standard comprehensive audit on every single file. We scrutinized the collateral documents. We verified the signatures. We discovered the forgery immediately. Arthur nods slowly, confirming my statement without speaking a word. What does that mean? Vivian asks, her voice barely a whisper. She is clutching Jeremiah's arm, looking terrified. It means checkmate, I reply, shifting my gaze back to Trent. When a borrower commits fraud to secure a commercial loan, it violates the primary terms of the agreement. The loan does not just go into review, it goes into immediate non-negotiable default. There is no 30-day grace period. There is no opportunity to cure the breach. The second I acquired that paperwork and verified the fraudulent signature, I had the legal right to call the debt. Trent finally looks up, his eyes bloodshot and filled with tears. You froze my operating accounts this morning, he chokes out. I did a lot more than that. I correct him, feeling a deep, sweeping sense of satisfaction. I did not just freeze your business accounts, Trent. Acting as the primary debt holder, I filed an emergency injunction. I have already executed a total foreclosure on all of your assets. The asset recovery team seized your company shares. They liquidated your personal banking accounts. They locked your investment portfolios. And this afternoon they seized the deed to your luxury townhouse. Everything you own is gone. You are legally bankrupt. You have absolutely nothing left. Chloe lets out a piercing, hysterical scream. She jumps up from her chair, her hands flying to her face. She is not the wealthy, untouchable golden child anymore. She is married to a broke, disgraced felon, and her lavish lifestyle has just evaporated into thin air. She turns on Trent, hitting his chest with her fists, screaming at him for ruining her life. Trent just stands there, absorbing the blows, too defeated to even fight back. I watch them turn on each other, feeling completely detached from their misery. They built their lives on lies, fraud, and the deliberate erasure of my daughter. Now they are suffering the natural, unavoidable consequences of their actions. Vivian suddenly collapses. She drops from her chair, her knees hitting the hardwood floor with a heavy thud. She crawls toward me, her designer dress pooling around her legs. Tears are streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. She grabs the edge of my chair, looking up at me with wild, frantic eyes. Maya, please, Vivian wails, her voice echoing shrilly in the dining room. You cannot do this. You are making your pregnant sister homeless. She has nowhere to go. The baby has nothing. How can you do this to your own blood? How can you be so evil? Evil, I look down at my mother. I feel no pity. I feel no guilt. She is perfectly willing to watch my daughter be stripped of her legal birthright, but she calls me evil for holding a criminal accountable. Jeremiah violently kicks his chair back. The heavy wood crashes to the floor behind him. He points a shaking, furious finger directly at my face. His eyes are burning with a toxic, uncontrollable rage. You think you have won? Jeremiah roars, spittle flying from his lips. You think you can destroy this family and just walk away? I will ruin you. Maya, I will use every connection I have in the Atlanta business scene to crush your firm. I will have you permanently blacklisted. You will never work in this city again." The silence in the dining room shatters the moment the words leave my mouth. Jeremiah grips the edges of the heavy oak table so tightly his knuckles turn stark white. His chest heaves, his breathing ragged and uneven. He looks at me as if I have just grown a second head. "You spent $5 million. Jeremiah repeats, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that steadily builds into a deafening roar. "You squandered $5 million of family capital. On what? A new mansion. A fleet of cars. You threw away your own sister's salvation out of spite." I do not raise my voice. I do not flinch. I let his fury crash against a wall of absolute, unbreakable calm. I smooth my hands flat against the polished wood of the table, making sure my posture communicates total control. "I did not squander a single cent. Dad," I say, my voice ringing out with crystal clarity. "I am a financial director. I do not buy depreciating assets. I made a highly strategic, incredibly lucrative corporate investment." I turn my gaze slowly toward Trent. The color has entirely drained from his face. He looks like a man standing on the gallows waiting for the floor to drop beneath his feet. He has stopped pacing. He is frozen in place, staring at me with a horrified, dawning realization in his eyes. His breathing is shallow and rapid. He knows exactly what I am about to say before the words even leave my mouth. 4 months ago, I explained, keeping my eyes locked on my brother-in-law, the Grand Trustee in New York legally verified Zuri's birth certificate. The $5 million disbursement was wired directly into my secure accounts. At that exact same time, Apex Financial was looking to offload a large portfolio of high-risk commercial debt. They needed immediate liquidity, and my wealth management firm was actively looking to acquire new assets. It was a perfect match. I used the $5 million from my great-grandfather's trust to purchase that entire debt portfolio in cash. Chloe frowns, her perfectly manicured hands twisting in her lap. Her eyes dart nervously between Trent and me. She is struggling to follow the corporate terminology, but she can read the absolute terror radiating from her husband. "What does that mean?" "That mean," Chloe demands, her voice shrill and trembling. "Why do we care what you bought with your stolen money?" "It means I bought Trent," I answer simply. The room goes dead quiet again. Arthur Vance, the family lawyer, slowly lowers his head, rubbing his temples as the full scope of my legal trap becomes apparent. "I bought the debt, Chloe." I continue, speaking slowly so every single syllable lands with maximum impact. "Trent took out a $3 million commercial bridge loan from Apex Financial to save his failing tech startup. When I purchased their portfolio, I acquired that loan. I am the primary debt holder. Trent does not owe a faceless bank $3 million. He owes me." Trent lets out a strangled, pathetic sound. He braces his hands on the back of a dining chair, his knuckles white, his entire body shaking. "You thought you were so brilliant, Trent," I say, my tone stripping away the last remnants of his dignity. "You thought you had orchestrated the perfect crime. You knew your tech company was bleeding cash. You knew your venture capitalists were about to demand an audit. So you took out a massive high-interest loan to cover your tracks. But you needed collateral. You did not have any assets left to pledge. So you forged my father's signature and used this family estate to secure the cash." Jeremiah gasps, falling back into his chair, as if he has been physically struck. He looks at Trent, then at Arthur, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of the betrayal. "You banked your entire survival on Chloe's pregnancy," I state, laying out the exact mechanics of their greed. "You read the trust documents. You knew the firstborn grandchild triggered a $5 million payout. You planned to take that money quietly, pay off the Apex loan before it matured, clear the lien on this house before my father ever found out, and pocket the remaining $2 million. It was a flawless plan. Except you forgot one crucial detail. You forgot that I had a child first." Chloe shakes her head wildly, tears streaming down her face. She looks at Trent, waiting for him to deny it. Waiting for him to spin one of his smooth, charismatic lies and tell her that everything is going to be fine. Trent says nothing. He just stares at the floor, completely broken. I turn my attention to Arthur Vance. The lawyer meets my gaze, his expression grim and resigned. "Arthur, as a seasoned estate and corporate attorney, You know exactly how commercial loan covenants function. I say, my voice carrying the sharp authoritative edge of an executive. When I took ownership of the Apex portfolio, my team ran a standard comprehensive audit on every single file. We scrutinized the collateral documents. We verified the signatures. We discovered the forgery immediately. Arthur nods slowly, confirming my statement without speaking a word. What does that mean? Vivian asks, her voice barely a whisper. She is clutching Jeremiah's arm, looking terrified. It means checkmate, I reply, shifting my gaze back to Trent. When a borrower commits fraud to secure a commercial loan, it violates the primary terms of the agreement. The loan does not just go into review, it goes into immediate, non-negotiable default. There is no 30-day grace period. There is no opportunity to cure the breach. The second I acquired that paperwork and verified the fraudulent signature, I had the legal right to call the debt. Trent finally looks up, his eyes bloodshot and filled with tears. You froze my operating accounts this morning, he chokes out. I did a lot more than that. I correct him, feeling a deep, sweeping sense of satisfaction. I did not just freeze your business accounts, Trent. Acting as the primary debt holder, I filed an emergency injunction. I have already executed a total foreclosure on all of your assets. The asset recovery team seized your company shares. They liquidated your personal banking accounts. They locked your investment portfolios. And this afternoon they seized the deed to your luxury townhouse. Everything you own is gone. You are legally bankrupt. You have absolutely nothing left. Chloe lets out a piercing, hysterical scream. She jumps up from her chair, her hands flying to her face. She is not the wealthy, untouchable golden child anymore. She is married to a broke, disgraced felon, and her lavish lifestyle has just evaporated into thin air. She turns on Trent, hitting his chest with her fists, screaming at him for ruining her life. Trent just stands there, absorbing the blows, too defeated to even fight back. I watch them turn on each other, feeling completely detached from their misery. They built their lives on lies, fraud, and the deliberate erasure of my daughter. Now they are suffering the natural, unavoidable consequences of their actions. Vivian suddenly collapses. She drops from her chair, her knees hitting the hardwood floor with a heavy thud. She crawls toward me, her designer dress pooling around her legs. Tears are streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. She grabs the edge of my chair, looking up at me with wild, frantic eyes. Maya, please, Vivian wails, her voice echoing shrilly in the dining room. You cannot do this. You are making your pregnant sister homeless. She has nowhere to go. The baby has nothing. How can you do this to your own blood? How can you be so evil? I look down at my mother. I feel no pity. I feel no guilt. She is perfectly willing to watch my daughter be stripped of her legal birthright, but she calls me evil for holding a criminal accountable. Jeremiah violently kicks his chair back. The heavy wood crashes to the floor behind him. He points a shaking, furious finger directly at my face. His eyes are burning with a toxic, uncontrollable rage. You think you have won! Jeremiah roars, spittle flying from his lips. You think you can destroy this family and just walk away? I will ruin you. Maya, I will use every connection I have in the Atlanta business scene to crush your firm. I will have you permanently blacklisted. You will never work in this city again. Jeremiah's threat echoes off the high vaulted ceiling of the dining room. He stands there, chest heaving, fully believing he still holds the power to destroy my career with a few phone calls to his country club friends. He expects me to cower. He expects the mention of the Atlanta business elite to send me retreating into submission. I do not even have to answer him. Isaiah steps smoothly around the edge of my chair, placing his body directly in the line of my father's shaking finger. My husband does not raise his voice. He does not match Jeremiah's frantic, chaotic energy. He moves with the terrifying, calculated precision of a predator closing a trap. He reaches down to the sleek leather briefcase resting near his feet, his thumb flicking the brass locks open with a sharp metallic snap that cuts through the heavy tension in the room. He pulls out a thick, heavy file. A bright red tab sticks out from the side, marking its contents as highly sensitive. Isaiah tosses the folder onto the center of the dining table. It lands with a heavy, definitive thud, sliding just inches away from my father's clenched fist. You cannot blacklist anyone, Jeremiah. Isaiah says, his voice a low, perfectly even baritone that commands absolute authority in the room. Your influence in this city relies on your capital, and as of this morning your capital no longer exists. My father glares at Isaiah, his jaw working furiously. What kind of garbage are you trying to sell me? Isaiah gestures casually to the red-tabbed folder. Maya is not foreclosing on Chloe and Trent's home, Jeremiah. That townhouse does not carry enough equity to cover a fraction of the bridge loan. Trent did not just use your house as collateral. Trent makes a sound like a dying animal. He practically collapses onto the floor, curling his knees toward his chest, his hands gripping his hair so hard he is pulling it out by the roots. He cannot even look at my parents. Jeremiah's eyes dart from Trent's pathetic form to the red folder on the table. His hand trembles slightly as he reaches out. He flips the heavy cardstock cover open. The color drains from his face so fast he looks as though he has been injected with ice water. The documents inside are not just loan applications. They are certified bank statements, wire transfer logs, offshore routing receipts, audit trails meticulously compiled by my firm's forensic accounting team over the last 4 months. Read the routing numbers, Dad. I instruct, my voice cutting through the dead silence of the room. Look at this withdrawal dates. Jeremiah's breathing turns shallow. His eyes dart frantically across the pages, flipping from one document to the next. His mouth opens but no sound comes out. Vivian scrambles up from the floor, using the edge of the table to hoist herself onto her feet. She leans over Jeremiah's shoulder, her tear-soaked eyes scanning the highlighted columns of numbers. She does not understand financial documents the way my father does, but she understands the balance lines. She understands zeros. What is this? Vivian whispers, her hands shaking as she points to a page. Jeremiah, what are these transfers? Why does the Vanguard account say 0? He drained it, I state, watching my parents' entire reality shatter in real time. Jeremiah looks up, his eyes wide and completely hollow. He stares at Trent, who is rocking back and forth on the floor. When Trent's first tech startup started bleeding cash 2 years ago, he panicked. Isaiah explains, stepping into the role of the executioner. He needed capital to appease his early investors, so he leveraged his position within the family. He used his access to your home office, Jeremiah. He bypassed your security protocols, forged your authorization matrix, and systematically siphoned funds from your primary retirement accounts. No, Jeremiah chokes out, gripping the table so hard his knuckles are stark white. No, that is impossible. My wealth manager would have alerted me. Arthur oversees the trusts. Arthur Vance looks away, his face pale and slick with sweat. Arthur was informed that the transfers were authorized seed money for Trent's new ventures, Isaiah counters smoothly. Trent provided falsified tax documents and fabricated email approvals from your private server. He created a shadow shell company that mirrored your investment firm, routing the funds offshore before dropping them straight into his failing business accounts. Chloe is staring at her husband as if she is looking at a stranger. The golden child, the sister who spent her entire life mocking my independence and parading her luxurious lifestyle in my face, is suddenly realizing that every diamond she wears, every designer bag she carries, was bought with stolen money. You stole from my parents. Chloe screams, her voice cracking into a hysterical pitch. Trent, you stole from my father. I had to, Trent suddenly shouts, looking up with wild, desperate eyes. I was trying to protect us. The business was going under. Jeremiah always said I was a genius. He always said I was going to be the next big thing. If I failed, he would have cut me off. I just needed a little bit of time to turn a profit, and I was going to put it all back. You took $12 million. Trent, Jeremiah roars, slamming his fists down on the table so hard the wood groans. You took $12 million of my money. I was going to put it back, Trent sobs, burying his face in his hands again. But you did not put it back, I say, my voice cold and unyielding. Because your second startup failed exactly like the first one. You burned through $12 million of my father's retirement savings. And when that was gone, you forged his signature to take out a $3 million commercial bridge loan just to keep up appearances. You drove this entire family straight off a financial cliff, and you hid behind Chloe's pregnancy to delay the fallout. Vivian lets out a sound of pure agony. She clutches her chest, backing away from the table as if it is on fire. We are ruined, she whispers, her eyes darting frantically around the lavish dining room. The house, the cars, the club memberships. It is all gone. We have nothing. Jeremiah looks like he is about to have a heart attack. He turns his furious, desperate gaze back to me. His eyes are wide, searching for a lifeline, searching for the obedient daughter. He spent 30 years kicking to the curb. Maya. He gasps, his voice completely stripped of its previous arrogance. Maya, you have the debt portfolio. You have the $5 million from the trust. You can reverse this. You can lend us the money to cover the margin calls. You can save us. I look at the man who has relentlessly bullied me, diminished my accomplishments, and tried to strip my daughter of her legal birthright just 20 minutes ago. I look at my mother who stood by and watched him do it, actively participating in my exclusion so she could prop up her perfect golden daughter. I slowly stand up from my chair. I do not raise my voice. I do not show an ounce of the anger that has been burning in my chest for decades. I just look at them with absolute devastating pity. I am not a charity dad. I tell him, my tone perfectly even. I am an executive, and you are a terrible investment. Jeremiah's mouth falls open. He reaches a shaking hand across the table toward me, but I step back. Isaiah adjusts his jacket, turning to look at my father with a cold, professional stare. The asset recovery team will be here tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock to begin the inventory process on the estate, Isaiah informs him. I suggest you spend the night packing your personal belongings. The house no longer belongs to you. Chloe lets out another piercing scream, burying her face in her hands, as the reality of her new impoverished life crashes down on her. Vivian is sobbing uncontrollably, clutching the back of Jeremiah's chair as he stares blankly at the red folder that holds his utter destruction. I turn on my heel and walk toward the dining room exit, the sound of my heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. Isaiah follows right behind me, carrying our daughter who is sleeping peacefully against his chest, entirely untouched by the chaos we are leaving behind. We walk out of the front doors and step into the cool night air. The heavy mahogany doors click shut behind us, sealing my family inside the nightmare they created for themselves. I take a deep breath, feeling the suffocating weight of 30 years finally lift off my shoulders. I am no longer the scapegoat. I am no longer the disappointment. I am completely, irrevocably free. Before I can even take a single step toward the foyer, the illusion of the perfect Sterling family completely and violently shatters. Jeremiah snaps. The decades of carefully curated country club elegance, the untouchable corporate patriarch persona, all of it evaporates in a split second. He lets out a guttural, deafening roar and lunges across the ruined dining space. He grabs Trent by the collar of his expensive tailored shirt, lifting the younger man half off the floor. "You stole everything from me!" Jeremiah screams, his face inches from Trent's spit flying from his mouth. "I will kill you. I will tear you apart with my bare hands." Trent's panic instantly morphs into feral, cornered survival. He is no longer the charismatic tech visionary trying to charm his father-in-law. He is a drowning man, and he refuses to let Jeremiah drag him under. Trent brings both of his arms up inside Jeremiah's grip and shoves the older man backward with brutal, uncompromising force. Jeremiah stumbles hard, his expensive leather shoes slipping on the spilled water and crushed roses. He crashes backward into the heavy oak table, gasping for breath, clutching his chest as the physical exertion catches up with his aging heart. Chloe shrieks, scrambling up from the floor. She reaches out for her husband, her tear-streaked face twisted in a desperate plea. "Trent, what is happening?" she sobs, grabbing his forearm. "Tell him it is a mistake. Tell him you are going to fix it." Trent rips his arm out of her grasp so violently that Chloe spins and hits the edge of the dining chair. He looks at his pregnant golden child wife with absolute unfiltered disgust. The loving, devoted husband facade is completely gone. "Fix it!" Trent spits, his voice dripping with venom. "There is nothing left to fix. Chloe. The money is gone. The company is dead. And now your sister just handed me over to the federal government." He takes a step toward her, his eyes wild and unhinged. "You told me this was foolproof," Trent yells, pointing an accusatory finger right in her face. "You said your family had endless money. You said the Sterling Trust would cover everything if things went sideways. You sat there and promised me that your idiot father had deep enough pockets to bail me out of anything." Vivian gasps, covering her mouth with both hands as she looks at her youngest daughter. You knew, Vivian whispers, her voice cracking. Chloe, you knew he was stealing from your father. Chloe shrinks back, her eyes darting frantically around the room, realizing she has just been entirely exposed. I didn't know how much, she cries out defensively. He said he just needed a temporary loan. He said he would put it all back before the quarterly statements arrived. You are useless, Trent snarls, completely stripping away any remaining shred of affection. I only married you for the safety net, and you could not even secure that. This is your fault. Trent does not look at Jeremiah. He does not look at Vivian. He certainly does not look at me. He simply turns on his heel and sprints for the foyer. The heavy mahogany front door flies open and slams shut with a thunderous crash. The sound of his luxury car starting up and tearing out of the gravel driveway echoes through the dead silence of the house. He has abandoned his pregnant wife, leaving her to face the impending criminal charges and the wrath of her destitute parents entirely alone. Chloe breaks down completely. She collapses onto the hardwood floor, curling into a tight, trembling ball. She is no longer the smug, entitled favorite daughter who spent her entire life mocking my independence. She is a terrified accomplice to federal fraud, suddenly realizing she has absolutely no one left to protect her. She lifts her head, her face a swollen, ruined mess of tears and mascara. She looks past Isaiah, locking her desperate eyes directly onto me. Maya, please, Chloe. Sobs her voice, a pathetic, high-pitched whine. Please help me. He left me. I am pregnant. I have no money. Please, you have to help your little sister. I look down at her, feeling absolutely nothing. You do not have a sister, Chloe. I state, my voice perfectly calm and devoid of all emotion. You made that perfectly clear a long time ago. Jeremiah and Vivian are staring at each other in shell-shocked horror. The reality of their situation is finally sinking into their bones. They have lost their entire life savings. They have lost their retirement portfolios. They are about to lose their beloved multi-million-dollar estate to their favorite child's husband. They are completely and utterly ruined. Slowly, as if moving underwater, they both turn their pleading eyes to me. The audacity of what happens next is almost impressive. Jeremiah attempts to straighten his jacket, trying to summon a fraction of his shattered dignity. He looks at me, tears welling in his aging eyes. Jeremiah begins, his voice shaking with a terrifying vulnerability. You have the $5 million. You own the commercial debt. You hold the title to this estate now. You can fix this. You can stop the foreclosure. You can return the retirement funds to our accounts. Vivian drops to her knees, crawling slightly forward on the expensive Persian rug. Please, Maya, she weeps, reaching a trembling hand out toward me. We are your family. We are your parents. You cannot leave us with nothing. Please, you are our daughter. I stand up slowly. I step around the large mahogany dining table, moving until I am standing directly in front of the two people who spent 3 decades making me feel incredibly small. Isaiah shifts slightly, keeping Zuri tucked securely against his chest, his presence an unbreakable wall of support behind me. I look down at my mother, kneeling on the floor in her ruined designer dress. I look at my father, a broken, empty man clinging to the ghost of his wealth. I bought the debt to protect my daughter's future, I say, my voice cutting through the room like a blade of ice. I did not buy it to subsidize your delusions. Jeremiah lets out a strangled, breathless gasp. You enabled Chloe's toxic entitlement for her entire life. I continue, speaking with absolute methodical precision. You cheered when she married a fraud. You happily participated in erasing my daughter's existence because you wanted to protect your own social standing. You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. I am foreclosing on this house tomorrow morning. Apex Financial will begin liquidating the remaining assets by noon. I turn my back on them. I do not wait for their protests. I do not wait for their tears. I walk toward the grand foyer, Isaiah falling perfectly into step beside me. I stop right at the front door. I place my hand on the cold brass handle and look back at the wreckage of the Sterling family one final time. Chloe is sobbing on the floor. Vivian is weeping uncontrollably. Jeremiah is staring blankly at the wall, completely paralyzed by his failure. But because I am not the monster you raised me to be, I announce, projecting my voice so it carries clearly across the grand foyer. I have prepaid a 1-year lease on a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the suburbs for you and Mom. The address and the keys will be delivered to your lawyers by the end of the day. I pause, letting the absolute humiliation of the offer sink in. They will have to live in the exact kind of working-class neighborhood they spent their entire lives mocking. Chloe can sleep on the couch, I add. I push the heavy door open and step out into the cool, crisp night air. I do not look back as the door clicks firmly shut behind me. 3 months later. The morning sun pours through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of our living room, bathing the entire space in a warm, golden glow. The house smells like fresh coffee and the sweet vanilla lotion I use on Zuri after her bath. It is peaceful, it is quiet, it is exactly the life I fought so relentlessly to build. I am sitting on the plush, oversized linen sofa, a warm mug of coffee resting in my hands. The television is playing quietly in the background, tuned to a local Atlanta news station. The volume is low, but the visual on the screen is impossible to miss. Trent's face flashes across the screen. It is a mugshot. His hair is unkempt, his eyes are hollow and terrified, and the arrogant slick tech CEO persona is completely erased. The news ticker at the bottom of the screen details his arrest by federal authorities. The charges scroll past in bold letters: multi-million-dollar wire fraud, corporate embezzlement, and bank fraud. He is facing decades in a federal penitentiary. I take a slow sip of my coffee, feeling absolutely no satisfaction, no anger, and no joy. I just feel an overwhelming sense of closure. The chapter is completely finished. Down on the soft woven rug, Isaiah is sitting cross-legged, building a massive tower out of brightly colored wooden blocks. Zuri is sitting opposite him, her little hands clapping together in pure, unadulterated delight. Every time Isaiah gets the tower high enough, Zuri lunges forward with a joyous squeal and knocks the entire structure down. Isaiah laughs, a deep, resonant sound that fills the room with warmth, and immediately starts building it back up for her. My personal cell phone suddenly vibrates against the glass surface of the coffee table. The sharp buzzing breaks through the quiet domesticity of the room. I set my mug down and pick up the device. The screen lights up with a preview of a text message. The caller ID shows Vivian. I stare at the glowing white text bubble. Please call me, the message reads. Chloe is driving us crazy. The apartment is too small. We have nothing. Please, Maya. We need you. I read the words twice. 3 months ago, a message like this might have triggered a spike of anxiety. It might have sent a familiar toxic wave of guilt crashing through my chest. I might have felt the old conditioned urge to fix their problems, to seek their approval, by bailing them out of the misery they brought entirely upon themselves. Today I feel nothing. I do not feel pity. I do not feel anger. I just feel an immense, beautiful peace. I tap the screen, opening the contact settings. I select Vivian's name, scroll down to the bottom of the menu, and press block caller. I confirm the action, permanently severing the final thread, connecting me to the people who never truly wanted me. I set the phone face down on the coffee table. I slide off the edge of the sofa and sit down on the soft rug right next to Isaiah. I wrap my arm around my husband's waist, leaning my head against his shoulder. He smiles, turning to press a soft, lingering kiss to my temple before handing me a blue wooden block. Zuri lets out a happy, bubbling laugh and crawls into my lap, her little hands reaching up to grab my fingers. I pull my daughter tight against my chest, surrounding myself with the only family that truly matters. The most profound takeaway from this story is that shared DNA does not obligate you to endure systemic abuse, exploitation, or disrespect. True family is built on mutual respect, protection, and unconditional love, not manipulation or financial entitlement. When toxic relatives use you as a scapegoat while enabling destructive behavior in a golden child, walking away is not an act of cruelty, it is the ultimate act of self-preservation. Establishing financial independence and unyielding boundaries provides an unbreakable shield. Ultimately, the greatest victory isn't destroying those who hurt you, but peacefully detaching from their chaos to thrive with the people who truly value your worth. Share your own experiences in the comments below. If you have ever had to set an unapologetic boundary to protect your peace from a toxic environment, and please hit the like and subscribe buttons for more empowering stories of resilience and triumph.